Thank you, Louis, for drawing our attention to the fact that we hadn't gotten the recording turned on. Again, we've already opened with a prayer, and our friends from Canada have kind of summarized their good feelings about the progress we made during the Tuesday evening conference call here. And we're moving forward. We're into discussion of the criminal complaint that's been brought before our Supreme Court of Law in response to the coronavirus emergency declarations that are so fraudulent, and that most of us are fully aware of the fraudulent nature of those. They're here for no other purpose than for engineering a military police state for our country. And so that's the nature of the criminal complaint that we're bringing forward here. We've discussed it in the last few conferences, that things weren't really in shape until the last conference or so, and now people have had time to look at it and get acquainted. And before Louis drew my attention to the fact that we weren't recording the conference, I was asking for people to share comments or questions, and I'd like to return to that point. Comments, questions, or constructive criticism about our coronavirus criminal complaint and model jury verdict here. Does anyone wish to speak to any of those issues? I yield. Anyone? Maybe we need a little bit more time to get acquainted with it. I would encourage people to look at these documents, because I believe most of us are aware that the military police state that's being engineered as a result of this coronavirus declaration that's so fraudulent is something that needs to be confronted, or else they're going to lock down their military police state over us, and we need to confront them through lawful process, due process of law. And until we do something like get a jury verdict in support of this criminal complaint against their leaders, then they're going to win. And they're going to come at us with force. I think most of us can realize the handwriting's on the wall. They're going to come against us with force, and the only way that we can fight back lawfully is to have due process of law on our side. And this counter complaint against them basically is intended to engineer that. So again, I'd like to pause for comments or questions for anybody.
Charles, if I may, we've
yes,
got there's some feedback or some background. David, I believe that's coming from your line. Okay, you've just taken care of it. Unless if you have a comment or question, go ahead.
Yeah, I opened my mic to just have a. I had gotten word yesterday or the day before that down in Florida there was a grand jury that had served a commission down there, and dealing with the county's issuance of this mask order for everybody to be wearing masks. And if nobody's heard of it, I was just going to look up, get the link for it. It's a brief video, and I can provide it in the chat. But maybe Charles would like to address the difference that he feels between the effectiveness of something like a grand jury determination versus a jury common law in both cases. I yield.
Thank you, David. I would like to address that. I'm not sure this is the best juncture. If there's not any further discussion on the agenda item of our criminal complaint, though, I think we can table that, at least for the time being, maybe, and then maybe I could jump into a little bit of an explanation of the difference between grand juries and trial juries under true common law. And I would like to introduce a few of the other new people that are here also. But do we have any other comments quickly on the coronavirus complaint and jury verdict that we've got before the court? I'll concede that if we don't.
May
Anybody? Michael, yes.
Yeah, Michael, Florida. I think it would be appropriate to table that discussion about the Florida action. I believe it's in Palm Beach County, but at this time, I think since we didn't have the recording on, if you could introduce some of the new participants, that would be interesting. I know there's going to be people wanting to listen to it that I know that I have recommended, so
All right.
I think it'd be appropriate. I yield.
Thank you, Michael. Louis, could you experiment with momentarily turning off screen share and see if maybe that brings up the bigger video screens for some of us here?
Okay, will do. One moment.
There we go. Okay. And maybe we can kind of bounce back and forth between screen share there, Louis, when we've got a document to focus on.
Sure, no problem. Let me know.
All right.
I yield.
All right. I'd like to introduce Daniel Krzyzinski, I believe. Daniel, could
we pronounce
you...
it Krynicki. If you want to say it in Polish, it's Krynicki. But we say,
okay.
I went to high school in Hamtramck, and I have a lot of Polish relatives, and there were a lot of Polish people in Hamtramck. But we say in English, Krynicki.
Krynicki.
Has started.
Well, you turned it off again?
Well, you're just making sure it was on, I'm sure.
Okay.
But
Great.
thank you, Daniel. Daniel, I know you're bringing a perspective. I'd like to introduce you to the group a little bit more. You focus a lot on economics, I think you mentioned, and also you're bringing a strong Christian perspective to your presence here in the community also. Could you elaborate on both of those a little bit to give everybody a little bit more background for who you are and what you're bringing to the table?
Sure, I can do that. About 3 years ago, I was being contacted by a young black man out in Salinas, California, and apparently he has a Bible-believing mother, and she had been reading the Bible for many years. And since I had been studying economics considerably since GWB got elected, I wanted to know why things are happening the way they are. And I couldn't believe some of the things that were going on. So, and I focused my attention at the traditional websites that most people go to, like LouRockwell.com. I read a lot of Gary North and the historian, Tom, whatever his name is, at Lew Rockwell, and Lew Rockwell himself, and their perspective. But fortunately, I had been reading the Bible myself since I was before I became 21, and I'm 73 now. So it's not like someone can fool me with their knowledge of economics when I know now, especially, that the Bible has a lot to say about money and finance. So I dug into the Bible real deep, especially after I got a hold of a book written by Michael Hoffman. He lives in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. Did you used to live in Idaho, Charles?
No, I'm from Oregon mostly.
Oregon.
Dan.
Okay, Oregon. Anyway, yeah. So the title of his book is Usury in Christendom. Now, Michael Hoffman, the author, is I wouldn't call him a traditional Catholic, because he believes a kleptocracy had taken over the church during the Middle Ages. In fact, Pope Leo X was of the Medici clan out of Florence, Italy, and they were moneylenders, usury bankers. And so we actually got a usury pope in 1515. He started up a usury bank called Monte di Pieta. It means charity bank. So as I went through his 416-page book, he had attribution for every statement he made, references. I checked out all of his source materials, and he did very well with that book. So it kind of changed my direction beginning around 2013, after I had got a hold of his book. I also had been following an economist from Netherlands for a number of years before that, who was tuned into this anti-usury business from a 1995 book written by a German professor whose name is Margaret Kennedy. So this whole anti-usury thing came upon me all of a sudden after I was 65 years old. Now, being a Bible student that I am, I also dug into the Bible. I dug my heels in pretty deep. And I got familiar with many translations, and I also referenced the original source text, the Hebrew Bible of the Torah, the Old Testament. And it's all been proven to me that, you just take that one statement from Jesus in Luke 6:35. When he had a discourse there about 6 or 8 verses long about loving your enemies. And within that discourse, if you take this one verse in the context of that single discourse, verse 35, it says, Luke chapter 6, verse 35, he said, lend expecting nothing in return. Well, what does that mean? Well, having studied economics since George W. Bush got elected, and putting everything together that came out of the Bible, I deduced that, well, our American history surely tells us a way of doing that. They did it in Massachusetts Bay Colony in 1690 by issuing bills of credit, which were legal tender currency to pay soldiers who fought in William's War against the French. And, of course, Abe Lincoln had the greenbacks printed during the Civil War. He and Salmon P. Chase, who was the Treasury Secretary. So and there were other periods in colonial history in which they lent out money. They paid money into circulation, paper money, paper currency, based on the value of goods and services rendered to the government. So we have all this rich history to draw upon. And then you have the gold advocates on the other side, like Gary North and Lew Rockwell, who hammer this gold thing, and there are a lot of gold advocates, by the way. But I came across that one passage in James chapter 5, where James railed against the merchants and the businessmen. And so many other passages in the Old Testament and everywhere else railed against charging interest in money lending. So that, coupled with the history I've learned in the United States. Let me backtrack here for a second to that passage in James. The main purpose of showing that passage is, he said in there, your silver and your gold are cankered. Well, what cankers it? It's the usury. It's not that we're not using gold as money. It's because we're charging interest. We're devaluing the currency that is in circulation. And, of course, all of you must know by now that every dollar the United States it puts into circulation is borrowed from the international bankers. That's another story. I don't know how many people know about this, but I got into Jefferson.
Daniel.
Yeah. You want to interrupt me?
Well, we've got a lot.
You got a big
a lot
agenda.
on our.
I got a whole book to tell you about. It's in my head. But go ahead. I'll stop.
All right. All right. I'd like to ask if there's others that haven't talked on the recording yet that are new. Shane, I don't think your brief introduction there was part of the recording, nor Elizabeth.
I'd like to interject.
Abe, go ahead.
Charles brings up a very important point about the most powerful tool that he believes, and he's got like 40 years under his belt, the most powerful tool he believes is using this jury verdict to somehow put a rock in their foot, a rock in their shoe, so that we can get noticed and get some kind of traction. And every time he seems to approach the subject, if anyone has any questions, concerns, interests, reservations, hesitations, or in some kind of capacity a comment to address that, and it is the most powerful tool he believes is in the basket, I'm kind of a little bit baffled how nobody seems to have comments, suggestions, criticisms, or in some capacity to address that issue if he feels it's the most powerful tool in the basket. And I'm just wondering, is it because nobody believes it's a tool, it's a blunt object, it's not sharp, or it has no traction? I really like to expand and expound on that a little bit, because it seems like that would warrant some sort of dynamic exchange, being that is the primary purpose why he's convening these conferences, is to put together a methodology that can somehow draw the attention to what it is that we want to do as a free people. And I really have a hard time standing by with idle chatter when we've got like a military strategy that's got to be performed here. I yield.
Hear, hear. May I? This is Bob in Charlotte County. Mike invited me on the call.
Hi, Bob. Yes. I think that would be good, and I will, David, in Michigan, I would like to return to the different jury verdicts. I will get to that, but Bob, yes, Michael's friend, could you go ahead and introduce yourself? And I think Michael indicated to me that you're facing some property issues with the county or something. They're trying to take some property away from you. Could you please give a brief introduction of what your background is a little bit and your issue with the county and they're trying to take your property?
Sure. I was in the Marine Corps for 3 years. I was in the Army for 7 years as an MP. I've worked with JAG. I've worked with NCIS. I've been in the Charlotte County Sheriff's Office for 7.5 years, and I ran for sheriff in that county in 1996. Now, I've been through all kinds of colleges and got all kinds of degrees, and I ain't worth a crap unless you're in their corporations. And this is what this is all really truly about, and this is what they're hiding from us, is the corporations have gotten rampant. They've gotten out of control. And I believe Trump is trying to get control of those corporations, even though he may be trying to, how should I say it, condense them all into certain corporations, which seems like that's where it's probably going to go. But even our local sheriff's offices don't know and don't realize that they are incorporated. They are working for a corporation above them. And that's why when you see what's going on in the world around us today because of these corporations, they're in corporations. And I know some of you guys listen to Anna Von Rice, and I don't agree with everything she says, but she's done her research. Trust me. She's done enough to make things logical and apparent to what's going on. If you have a business and you're incorporated, you ask for someone in that business for a license to do your business when God tells you you don't have to do that. You don't need to do that. There's nothing in the Bible that ever says that you have to ask another man for a license to do what you must do that he gave you to do, and that's survive.
Right.
Okay? So many people, I do a lot of posting on American Patriot Email Report. I'll repeat that. American Patriot Email Report. So far, as I've noticed, I haven't looked tonight, but he's had my 2-page letter that I just wrote 3 days ago on top for the last 3 days. and it explains this a lot. And I plead with law enforcement officers because they are supposed to be helping us, the people. They are not supposed to be going rampant and fear for their jobs because the corporations may fire them because they don't do what they're being told to do. That's not what they're hired for. I was just put off my property, and it's amazing. It's a long story, gentlemen. I don't want to get into it with you all at this time, but I tell you what I will do before I continue is I'm going to give you my information so you can contact me, and I will not hesitate to give you anything that you ask. And that's at Tree Farmer with one E. It's spelled. My email is Tree Farmer, T-R-E, and I'm a tree farmer is what I am, but I only spell it with one E. And then H, from my last name is House, at CenturyLink.net. Now, if you wish to see everything that I've ever done under affidavit forms, under common law, I've registered everything I've done. I shouldn't say registered, that's a bad word. I've placed it in the public records. And here's where you can find that, in the public records of the county itself. And that would be Charlotte, C-H-A-R-L-O-T-T-E, clerk, C-L-E-R-K, .com. You do the search around, click on the upper one on the top for record search, and then hit public records. Click on public records and put my name in there. My name is House Robert. Last first, first last. House Robert. And you'll find 30-some pages of affidavits put in and submitted to these corporate people who never once answered any of these affidavits. And under common law rule, affidavits not answered stand as truth. And what people don't comprehend is that affidavit stands as truth, and that means that nobody challenges it. And if nobody challenges it, well, then it's the court. It is a court decision under common law. All right, let me yield with that, because I know I've filled you guys full.
Thank you, Robert. I'm not sure that an unrebutted affidavit is automatically a court judgment. I know it can amount to a court judgment, but I think it needs to at least go before a judicial officer and perhaps even a jury before it's a technically final, conclusive court judgment.
See, here's where you're wrong. Because, see, in order to have an affidavit of accusation, you accuse someone. And if I'm the accuser and I accuse somebody of something and they don't respond back, why wouldn't they want to respond back? The only time it goes through a court system, which is the under common law would be the grand jury, and the grand jury of 25 would select a court of 12. That's when it would go through, because then there's a retaliation, See, when they say your affidavit is wrong and in error, and they supply another affidavit, that's when it goes to that next step. But otherwise, if they don't comply to it, they don't answer to it, they have no complaint. There is no complaint. There's no retaliation of the complaint. So it stands, after so many days, it stands as the court decision because nobody else can change it after that.
Well, it would be my position that there would have to be some form of an entry of some document from some official with the court into the court record clearly declaring that the accused have failed to respond, and here under the court's decision is in favor of Robert House.
That's correct. So to get into the nitty-gritty of all of this is once you do this affidavit, and we do them with 2 witnesses, and I've noticed now that most of the attorneys are using 2 witnesses. They never did that before. They were just using notary publics. Once you do it 2 witnesses and you swear to it and you put your God-given seal, which is your thumbprint, on that, that's your seal. That stands as golden until somebody challenges it. Now, what you do with that document is you place it into their public record. that the corporation, public record, clerk of court in my county, it's the clerk of court, and then you ask them for a certified copy, and that certification of that certified copy comes from the state official, the Secretary of State stamp. Now they automate it, and they're trying to go around us in so many ways that they used to use an impression stamp, and they don't anymore. And and now we got the COVID, and we can't confront them and serve them personally anymore with two witnesses that we have behind us. They're confronting us in every single way and trying to stop us from doing what we're doing. But you're correct. You're 100% correct that they have to be served and they have to be noticed. So what we do down here, I do, is I take two people with me to witness everything that I do. Even if I go to the post office and I select registered mail or certified mail, I got two witnesses with their thumbprint on a proof of service. It's called the proof of service that was designed for that. It's just like the same proof of service that a corporate agency would use, a state process server, for instance, proof of service, or the sheriff's office, proof of service. They have the signature, date, and time and all that when it was served and who it was served to, and that they identified the person. What we do is we do a proof of service saying that we did enter it into the Postal Service to deliver it, because we know that the Postal Service is on their side, and they've been causing a lot of havoc with documentation, and the biggest one is what they're causing is that they're interfering with a lawful document going to the party it's meant to go to directly to, and they're allowing the directed party to have a secretary or somebody pick it up for them and sign for them, and that breaks the chain of custody. But they can't get away with it, because eventually what we do on the affidavit is notice to principal is notice to agent is notice to principal, meaning that if the agent gets it, they're responsible for it, as is their boss who it's tended for.
Thank you, Bob. If we might, perhaps we can jump in again to more details of your insights. You're obviously a skilled researcher, and your case. I understand you've got a property case there too. Perhaps we can talk about that a bit later in the conference here.
Gentlemen, I really actually just got in, and if you know anything about Florida temperatures at this time and day, I'm one of these guys that I live off the land. Okay, I'm 63 years old. And I'm out picking palmetto berries all morning. It's awfully hot out there. I just turned them in and came home, and I got my chores. I've got several hogs that I have a hog farm, and these hogs aren't fenced in. They live on my 20 acres, and now they took 10 acres away from me, supposedly, and I'm worried about their welfare and, of course, other things. I haven't eaten yet, haven't taken a shower last night because of the law enforcement that was here, 5 of them, and then the 6th one came shortly after. I didn't get to sleep last night until about 12 o'clock, and I woke up at 4 o'clock so I can go out and pick berries in the heat again. And my wife has got dinner ready, and I would love to be on this call and answer anything I could do, but I'd prefer, if you could, let's keep in touch with email. Let me know one day ahead of time before you have these calls, because I don't often go on my computer at this time in the afternoon because of these chores that I have out in the hot sun. I get really tired and get drained. Now, I've got a lot of energy for 63 years old. Believe me, ex-Marine, ex-soldier, all this stuff. And believe me, it is ex, because at the time that I was indoctrinated in these organizations, I didn't know, which I've proven beyond a doubt, I was a hired mercenary. That's another story later on. You guys are recording this, correct?
Correct.
Good. But if you can, please email me and remind me, and let me prepare to get on the call. Mike called me earlier tonight, and I was just, look, another day or two and my berry picking season's over with, and I'm free, and I don't have to strain myself so much.
All right, sounds good. And
talking to you guys.
All right. Well, we'll catch you more when you've got more time on your schedule there, Robert.
Please do. Email me. I'm tired. I've got to get some sleep. I've got to get some food in me. I didn't even eat breakfast this morning because I was so upset from last night. But and I'll fill you in on that. That's not a big problem. Everything's in public record. I put everything that I do in the public record.
Excellent.
What was your name?
Charles Stewart in Texas.
Stewart. John Stewart?
Charles.
Charles. Stewart. All right, Charles. I appreciate you letting me talk.
Sure.
And let's get together again.
That sounds like a good plan, Robert.
All righty. Thank you.
Yep. Comments, questions from anybody? I am thinking of revisiting the issue that David tried to draw me out from about the difference between trial juries and grand juries. But does anybody have any comments or questions on Robert's comments or anything of general interest thus far?
Autumn, Maine.
Autumn, hi.
Hi, Charles. I just want to thank Robert and ask the Lord to keep him protected and to supply all his needs. In Jesus, amen.
Thank you. Amen. Yes.
Amen.
All right. Yeah, it is a spiritual battle, and there are powerful forces in that spirit realm, both good and evil, and we need to align with the good, however we might conceive those good spiritual forces. Is there any other quick introductions or comments? I would like to capitalize on the prompt that David Scheid in Michigan gave me to elaborate on the recurring issue of grand juries and trial juries and the difference between them and the usefulness of both of them. Anybody else have anything else before I kind of try to jump into that issue?
Scotty, point of clarification.
Scotty.
Yeah, I only caught a little bit of that. I just got on. That man sounded amazing. One more aspect. I never looked at it, the fact that the post office is in on it, but one other additional extra is you can insure for $500 the letter. So you can't do it certified or registered if you do that. It goes differently. But if it doesn't get through to where it's going, you can get $500, and then supposedly if they weren't in with the post office, they would then go investigate, well, why did you interfere with the mail getting to wherever it was going, grand jury or whatever. That's something from Rule of Law, Randy Kelton. He teaches that kind of stuff. I yield. All
right. And thank you. Randy Kelton is one of the more reputable scholars that I'm aware of. I would like to communicate with him. I'm glad you mentioned his name there, Scotty. But unless there's any other quick comments, I would like to again revisit the issue of trial juries as opposed to grand juries. Any objection to me launching into that real quick? Anybody? Hearing none. Lysander Spooner wrote a book called An Essay on Trial by Jury back in the 1850s or so, and that was one of the first books I read, and it was very difficult to get a hold of it at the time, and it shows that the trial jury is the essence of common law. It's the core of what the common law is all about. And if people take some time to meditate on the larger context of what a grand jury is all about, they'll realize that in modern usage anyway, the grand jury is a tool that is used by either local district attorneys or statewide or national attorney generals prosecuting attorneys that have a monopoly on the ability to prosecute criminal complaints. Okay? The attorney generals locally and the district the district attorneys locally and the attorney generals of the state and the nation always use grand juries to give them, quote, color of legitimacy, unquote, for what amounts to a monopoly on their ability to bring criminal complaints before courts. Okay, that's the larger context of the grand jury scenario. Now, in the pure common law society, in contrast therewith, is the right of the people to bring their own criminal complaints. It's not monopolized by a local district attorney or an attorney general. That power is in the hands of the people, the qualified electors at the grassroots. And so, and the final step in achieving a verdict and getting a criminal put in jail or at least taken out of a public office that they hold is a verdict, a jury trial verdict. Even advocates of grand juries admit that things have to eventually go to trial juries. But if we're allowing criminal complaints to be brought directly by the grassroots people as qualified electors, then there's no need, there's no monopoly on bringing criminal complaints before the court by district attorneys or attorney generals. That is entirely a mechanism of Roman municipal civil law. It's top-down authoritarian. It centralizes the ability to prosecute criminal complaints in the hands of an agent, a franchisee of the municipal civil government of the state. That's what the local district attorneys are. They've got a franchise from the municipal government of the state. And so we're bypassing that. When you realize how the old common law system worked prior to the Norman conquest of 1066 AD, and the conference invitation had web links about that. You can look it up. That's a real historical social structure that was in existence. People had the right to bring their own criminal complaints, and that links to our even deeper history of the biblical Torah law. And so it plugs into Christianity and the Israelite Torah law tradition. But the grand jury thing is a mechanism of top-down authoritarian Roman municipal civil law, and it's there as nothing less than a distraction. Once you comprehend due process of law under the pure common law tradition is way different than due process of law under the perverted version that has been adulterated with Roman municipal civil law, as all of our constitutions are that way. They're combinations of common law. They purport to respect our common law due process rights, but they all establish Roman civil municipal governments that centralize power away from the central theme of this conference, where the local communities, like at the precinct level with our 100 courts, this is where the power to hold trials is vastly decentralized down to the local communities of 100 people, and the right to bring criminal complaints is decentralized further right on down to the grassroots qualified electors amongst those common people. And there's no reason whatsoever to go through the intermediary step of getting formal approval from a grand jury before you go straight to the trial jury. Once the criminal complaint is presented by the qualified elector before the court, the next step is to begin forming the trial jury. Any efforts at bringing around a grand jury at that point would be needless redundancy, because the sworn criminal complaint establishes, quote, probable cause to form the belief that a crime has been committed, unquote. Because of Magna Carta, there's provisions in Magna Carta that say that the municipal government, government of the king, he's really an emperor, is not able to bring criminal complaints directly with his agents. It has to be from the people in their own local courts. So Magna Carta put up a bulwark, and grand juries were nothing less than an invention to get us to circumvent that prohibition that existed in Magna Carta. And thereunder, these Roman Empire franchisees, district attorneys, and attorney generals, they can say they're not bringing the complaint directly in violation of Magna Carta because they bamboozled a bunch of stupid commoners together to rubber stamp their criminal complaint against some honorable patriot that's doing something innocent. They do that purposefully to work around Magna Carta, which was designed, and like the Canadian friends indicated in their research, there are problems with Magna Carta. It was a half-hearted effort, but it did have powerful provisions that have worked for our protection. And thereunder, one of those protections has caused the bad guys such a problem that they had to invent grand juries. Grand juries are a legal fiction invention. Due process of law in pure, simple common law tradition allows sworn criminal complaints from qualified electors at the grassroots to invoke due process of law before the court, and thereunder the next step is to begin forming the trial jury to adjudicate the merits of the complaint before the court. That grand jury is an intermediary step that does nothing but obstruct due process of law. So I hope that clarifies what I believe is advanced enlightenment on that. I've raised this issue a number of times with a number of people, and I haven't had anybody try to argue against what I'm saying here. But it kind of frustrates me a little bit that people continue returning to talking about how we got to bring our complaints before grand juries when I've already explained that trial juries is the real pure common law methodology. So I'd like to draw David Scheid from Michigan, or if he doesn't have any comments, anybody else about David, did you think that I covered those issues adequately here?
Well, as usual, beautifully covered, and it's consistent every time I hear it. And I just think that it needs to be repeated quite often because I've seen in Michigan statutes that the criminal complaint suffices statutorily as an indictment by itself and reasonable cause to believe that a crime has been committed, and it's supposed to administratively have require that any judge of law initiate an administrative issue an arrest warrant and start immediately the investigation of the criminal complaint. But of course that does not happen, and I've got all the proof that that does not happen because I've tried it over and over and over again and cited all the laws, and it is a monopoly on their part. And I've taken it I've sued prosecutors in the state and federal courts only to come up with judicial rulings that say that we, the people, have no interest whatsoever in the adjudication or the prosecution of another individual. So. Anyway, thank you very much, Charles, for addressing that again, and so eloquently. I yield.
Thank you, David. Comments, questions from anybody else in the forum here?
May I, Michael, Florida?
Michael, yes, please.
Yeah, just briefly, you know, this is our enigma, enforcement. We have no enforcement, and this is our problem. I yield.
Thank you for providing additional focus there, Michael. And I think that kind of merges. Abraham, please, yes.
I would like to hear some feedback from other people who are on this forum, because I hear the idea of the grand jury popping up so many times like it's the end-all, be-all to everything. If anybody has any contrasting, conflicting, or opposing information about how the grand jury functions, if they could please voice it so we can get into a dynamic exchange on the controversial viewpoints between a grand jury and a common law jury. So somebody out there has got to have some kind of contrasting views because it keeps coming up. I yield.
Thank you, Abraham. I think we're at a juncture here where maybe we can put the grand jury, trial jury debate on a back burner, at least for the moment, and go to your previous issue, Abraham, about empowerment of the people at the grassroots and taking the country back, and that relates to Michael's issue of enforcement. So I'd kind of like to steer the conversation in that direction, unless there's an objection from anybody. Hearing none. Yes, Michael, the enforcement issue. That, and I think we've had this discussion before, so it's kind of like revisiting it. But and to bring a new element, as I'm trying to catch a wave here, statutes recognize the right of citizens' arrest. Okay. I don't know if Florida statutes do, but I know I've seen it in Oregon and at least a few other states that the right of citizens' arrest is recognized when we see a crime being committed. Our problem with citizens' arrest is we got to take it to somebody, and the arrested person. And I believe Oregon statutes went further in saying that whenever a citizen arrests somebody, they have to take him either to a peace officer, which would be one of our town constables, or to a judicial officer, which would be one of our local justice of the peace officers. And they're under the grassroots mechanism is fairly well spelled out in statutes. Statutes give us a lot of clues as to how the common law tradition has been incorporated into our general state governing body of statutory code-based law, because there have been sincere efforts to incorporate common law principles into the state statutory codes. And when we cite those, it takes the wind out of the sails of a lot of our detractors that like to criticize us. Again, the enforcement issue, that I believe the enforcement issue is so massively decentralized in common law tradition as recognized in statutory codes that all we got to do is start recruiting people, and then when we appear in court hearings, and we've got our own judicial officer from one of the precincts appearing with us in court, and we've got a large number of people that are town constables under that judicial officer that have every bit as much authority in that courtroom as any local municipal police officers or any deputy sheriffs. See, at that point, the courtroom becomes a public courtroom rather than a municipal franchisee that is there to pursue a municipal agenda that is more about government than about the rights of the people. So I do believe we've got... Go ahead, Abraham.
that sounds a lot like if you build it, they will come. If you make it apparent, then it will have an effect. So, Michael, it's kind of hard to say how would enforcement work when it's not there. But if we build it, they will come. I think that's along the lines what Charles is trying to spell out. If we build it, then it will be there. I yield.
May I? Michael, Florida.
Michael. Yes, Michael.
Yeah, building it and having a structure in existence is a plus. I can't deny that. That's a fact. However, when you arrest someone with a citizen's arrest, there's the potential, and I say just the potential, but it's a strong potential that you could be charged with kidnapping. And that is a big crime with a lengthy sentence, and most people will not want
Michael,
to take
even if the statutes are
okay, I wasn't finished. May I return and finish?
Sure. Sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's real brief. Most people will not take the risk of being charged with, kidnapping. I yield to your comment, Abraham.
Okay, I agree with you 1,000% there. But if you've got a body of evidence that says this person is guilty of XYZ charges, and you've got their own statutes and codes substantiating those charges, I mean, can you go into a courtroom with all the evidence that says this is indeed a fact, and then it be deemed not a fact against their own rules and regulations? Yeah, it could happen. But they would have to turn their entire system upside down to get a conviction. Do they do that? Absolutely, they do that. But then you couldn't do. Then in that case, we should all stop, because that means there's absolutely nothing that can be done. Because if we have all the statutes and all the regulations and all their codes from their books, from their rulings, from what holds up, what is that, case law, that has been tried and has been proven to be true, and they can still fly in the face of that. Okay, well then maybe you have a point. Then there's absolutely no use for us to move any further from this point, if they could do that.
No, well, they're doing it. They've been doing it, and that's the problem.
They're doing it.
If I may, this is why we need numbers. This is why we need critical mass. The founders had 3%. I'm not saying we even need that much, but we need numbers. When we do anything that we're planning, we need numbers. And I'm not putting a number on the number, okay? I'm just saying we need larger numbers of people in our own local communities to join with us. And I believe this should be the primary focus at this time, is gaining numbers.
Absolutely. Thousands.
Thank you.
You're 100% correct. Thousands. And there has to be an expeditious way that you can get the traction. Because what's more important than this? What could possibly be more important than this subject? To gain thousands of people, once the methodology is perfected, and that methodology has to be honed in, it has to be electronic circuitry perfection. So when that switch is flipped, the lights go on. The television goes on. The circuitry has to be perfect. The people have to not just be a bunch of mindless numbers, but a bunch of people honed into what's going on. And yes, can you get thousands? I believe you can get tens of thousands of people. Look, I've seen some of these protests that they don't show us in mainstream news, where they got tens of millions of people in the street. Somebody made that happen.
If I might, are we good here? Can you all hear me?
Can I cut ahead of you, Scotty?
I think, Scotty, can I make a point first?
Okay.
I would like to point out that the constructive notices are really important to be sending out to the de factos up front. And another point, the statutes, when the citizen's arrest, the enforcement issue, when the citizen's arrest is made, the statutes clearly say that the person doing arrest shall deliver the arrested person as quickly as is reasonably efficient and possible to the nearest peace officer or to the nearest judicial officer. So that tremendously mitigates the charges, the potential for charges of kidnapping against somebody that's making a citizen's arrest, Michael. If the person making the citizen's arrest takes the arrested person to a town constable or to a precinct level justice of the peace, then the arrested person is no longer in the custody of the person that did the individual arrest, and the person that did the individual arrest is compliant with the technical wording of the statute, and it would be very, very difficult to make a kidnapping complaint against a person that made an arrest when that person complied with the statutory guidelines for bringing the arrested person to a peace officer or to a judicial officer. I think that's a really powerful point that provides a lot of insulation for the concern that you voiced there, Michael, about kidnapping. Could I get a comment from you on that?
I'd really like to yield right now and just listen. I feel that I made my point, and I want to listen to further points on the subject, and I'd probably have something more to say in a little bit, but I'm just kind of listening right now.
All right. I guess it'd probably be good to turn the microphone back over to Scotty that was trying to say something there. Scotty?
Yes, I just wanted to agree. Yeah, both Mike and Abe made really points. I agree absolutely 1,000% with both of them, but I think Mike's looking at a smaller picture where Abe's looking at the bigger picture. Abe is looking at the whole, there's more to it than just the citizen's arrest. And then you have to include a couple of levels of, one, was there an administrative process done first to show your intent, to show the facts, and then you have to go to the after the fact if something were to happen, and that means it still comes down to intent. You can't kidnap by, without intent to kidnap. And clearly, you could lay down the parameters and the paper trail that is uncontestable with affidavits and sworn whatever, all properly done, that there's no way to challenge this intent was nothing but honorable. So you can't, can take these statutes all seem to be based on that intent clause. You understand? And sometimes you can't prove intent of why somebody did something. That's the difficult thing. Particularity is who, what, where, when, and how. But we don't do why. But why is usually for money or to cover their crimes. And then you fail to just 2 points of the puzzle that I see. We're not figuring. We're also doing this to help the Leos. Okay? They're going to be taken out when their job is done. Some of them are already seeing that things ain't right. They're already not getting the respect that they earned, that they should have. They're not all bad. Some of them, and it's the same goes with anybody that's not even in military, anywhere in the government, any agent or actor, be it military. So you're not including getting some of them to come over. We don't need thousands of them. You get one or two, and then they have their cousin and their friends. It doesn't work the way that Mike is looking, but it does work a little bit more like Abe is talking. So I'm saying I agree with both of them 1,000%, but I think Abe is looking at the more influx, that things are changing at a rate on a daily basis. Things change, and still some of them on the inside may realize that, maybe I should change my vibration and be honorable. So I think you're leaving out a few pieces of the puzzle that can, overnight, dramatically change getting more people. And then the extra additional layer of cushion is not for the Leos and for the actors, but for the normal Joe on the street that doesn't know shit from squat, that offering free stuff gets people on board. And also offering the ability that when knowledge is power, if you can save money on your water bill or be able to produce electric from a battery that will do things that normally you wouldn't do by knowing a little bit more about free energy type technology. So by giving out little dribs and drabs of something without giving away the secret that's not challenging big electric or big whatever, we have the ability in this small group, by using things like maybe I Can Supply and some of my network, where we have something to market, to put out there, just to put out there to see who we can suck in with it's sort of a bait and switch, but it's really, truly, and honorably not a bait and switch. It's really a more honorable giving them what they want by giving them free stuff or the knowledge to save money on their water bill or their electric bill, and then you're throwing in with what they want with what they need. So it's kind of a bait and switch, but it's really not. So I just wanted to add that's about 5 or 6 pieces to the puzzle that are in flux that could grow and materialize overnight to thousands from just 3 people. And it could be done in anywhere. Someone in the government that realized that days are numbered, and certainly we know that through history, once the law enforcement or whoever thug's job is done, they are usually eliminated. So I just wanted to add that in. I yield there.
Thank you, Scotty. Comments, questions, anybody?
If I may, this is David.
David.
I think that when we're talking about citizens arrest also, we've got to look at the difference between the obvious, say a mugger, who you just witnessed somebody mugging somebody else, and you're going to intervene and take them down because you think you can or you have the opportunity. And being an eyewitness to criminal racketeering, which is also a felony. And in all likelihood, the people who are committing the racketeering are surrounding themselves with other people, including those with guns. And for us to try to single-handedly, anyway, make a citizen's arrest against those racketeers, because we are an eyewitness and we have the right to do it, but the situation would not behoove us to make the attempt, because in all likelihood they're surrounded by people that have guns and don't see that person as having committed a crime, even though you're an eyewitness to it. And so we've got to, as Abe had said earlier, we've got to work the numbers, or somebody had said it earlier, that we have to have the numbers so that when we witness a crime such as racketeering and we've got the evidence, that we are able to present this to somebody, which may be a legitimate purpose for the people as a grand jury as opposed to a jury. So just thought I'd throw that out there, that there is a difference between citizens' arrest right once you're a witness to a crime as you know, in the obvious, which is in the sense of a mugging, as opposed to your eyewitness being to a racketeering event. I yield.
Thank you, David. Other comments, questions?
May I, Michael in Florida? You know,
yes.
The de facto is in this for the long run. And they're going to not take it very kindly if one of their own gets arrested by a citizen's arrest from one of us. They are going to do everything in their power to make a national spectacle of what we did. So what the last speaker just said, you know, what type of a crime is it that we're arresting them for? You know, if it's a mugging, you know, citizens' arrests happen all the time. Hear about, we have a lot of background noise. Static, technical background noise, it sounds like. But anyways, these citizens' arrests happen all the time. There was a situation in a restaurant down here where someone went berserk and started yelling and screaming, and 3 or 4 people in the restaurant made a citizen's arrest. And when the police got there, hey, they applauded them. They were heroes, even by the de facto. But that was a clear-cut example. But when we do it, with one of the racketeering de facto members, and we have a more complex case over a long period of time, the evidence is going to be harder to prove and more complex. And this is where we come into problems. And again, this is why we need to grow our numbers first.
Michael.
While at the same time creating strategy. We have background noise. I yield.
Michael, I hear what you're saying very clearly, and there's a misnomer on this term citizen's arrest. If we have a common law district that's fleshed out pretty reasonably, you should have, a dozen justices apiece, a dozen constables. So you're talking about more than just one eggnog on the street, grabbing somebody by the neck. You're talking about a common law district of people coming together with the proper jurisdiction, with multiple common law officers, with multiple justices apiece, multiple constables, and perhaps even a couple of common law judges. So rather than just...
Again, if I may interject in a timely manner, I agree.
Sure, go ahead.
We must grow the numbers first. I'm in agreement with you.
Now, before you grow the numbers, Michael, you have to get the theory intact. And if you keep throwing up the obstacle of the numbers, we won't have the ability to flesh out the theory. So let's flesh out the theory. What the obstacles are.
I said simultaneously growing the movement through strategy. I agree. We should not stop growing our strategy and putting a structure in place. That continues every single day. We do not stop that. However, we've got to focus on getting numbers first while simultaneously building our structure.
You just can't haphazardly throw a drag net out and scoop up a bunch of fish in a net, and there you got your numbers. No, you've got to have an extremely concerted, focused unfolding of a schematic or a systematic process where you're going to be putting on town constables, you're going to be putting on justices of the peace, you're going to be putting on common law judges. You have to have that thing intact first before you throw a net in the water and grab thousands of minnows. In other words, you got to give enough time. Rather than keep throwing up the obstacle of numbers, the paradigm has to be set first in stone. You have to confirm that the circuitry will function as designed. When you build electronics, I got an electronics background. When you build electronics, you have multiple testing on every circuit to make sure that thing is going to function as designed. It's the same thing with this. As we're assembling the design, and Charles got a pretty reasonably intact design. So it's about unfolding that design. We understand it takes numbers. Please don't bring that up again. We know it takes numbers, but to focus and allow the mind to strategize on how to build the design of the system first, and then the numbers will follow. If you build it, they will come.
If I might.
Yeah, go ahead. I yield.
Thank you, Michael, and Abraham. Michael, I think the number threshold can be much lower than what you might be visualizing. When we factor in Abraham's reaffirmation of having a model for empowering the grassroots, then we will be more attractive to the people because they will be able to intellectually comprehend how the empowerment will work for them. And I dare suggest numbers as low as 10 or 12 in county commissioners meetings or court environments. Those numbers right there can embarrass the presiding judge or the chief county commissioner off of the bench, and at that point we can take the reins of power, the reins of judicial authority or local governmental, county governmental authority away from that de facto municipal governmental officer, and at that very moment displace him or her with a governing body assembled from the precinct captains to decentralize the power of the county down to the precincts and then to the townships where it's supposed to be. And I do believe that can be accomplished with much less numbers once people comprehend the grassroots empowerment that the common law tradition brings to us here.
Okay, may I?
Yes, Michael.
Yeah, we had an example recently, and I've mentioned this before, but there are others on the line that have not heard it. In our county commission meeting here in Charlotte County, Florida, we had a couple of incidences where the county commissioners reprimanded the few of us that were in the room from clapping. We were told that we can't clap. And that particular day we had to obey because we were few in numbers. The next time we had maybe almost 20 people, and when they told us to stop clapping, we refused to obey. And we continued to clap, and we did it intentionally to show them that they were not going to steal our expression of free speech by clapping. And there was nothing they could do about it. We had between 15 and 20 people in the room that were allied with us, and we dominated the room. We were the majority in that room. There might have been 35 people tops in the county commission that day. So I am not...
Extrapolate that over. Let's say in that meeting, if you would have had maybe 10 town constables, 5 justices of the peace, a couple of precinct captains, right, and a horde of people outside, you know, your band of the masses or the followers, but you had integral common law jurisdiction in that courtroom of a bunch of common law officers, justices of the peace, town constables, precinct captains.
I don't know why you're telling me this. I've told you I agree with you. You need to listen more carefully to my response.
Mike, it's not directed towards you. It's in a general form so everybody can follow the theory.
Okay. Yeah, I don't disagree.
In other words, I agree. Had that been more fleshed out, because what you did was brilliant, right? But had more time to develop, and you had more effort behind it, and a couple of more brains to help assemble it, that the possibility we could have took over that township.
David.
I yield.
I think that would be the appropriate application for the militias. Is that if you need to have a show of force, and we are talking about enforcement right now, that is the place for the common law militia. I yield.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
If I might, the word militia usually connotates an armed group functioning under state-level authority. The word for the same body, politically subdivided down closer to the more powerful grassroots, is posse comitatus. And I would suggest that would be a better term to be using than militia when we're trying to focus especially on taking power back at our county levels. Maybe at the state level we would be wanting to reference militia more, but at the county level I think the proper term, and the city level even, would be referencing the phrase posse comitatus.
And may I, Mike in Florida, I would like to clarify for lawful purposes that we mean nothing in regard to violence or armed conflict. We are simply meaning filling the room with Minutemen and Minutewomen that on a moment's notice can be anywhere in the county, whether it be a protest of Antifa or a county commission vote that is de facto. And this is what we're building right now. We're calling it a neighborhood watch group, just so that we, are a little more digestible politically. But in reality, it is a Minuteman fast response team of fellow Charlotte County citizens and Sarasota County citizens, because Antifa and Black Lives Matter is planning on showing up at people's homes in the middle of the night with protests and rock and violence. So we are organizing to respond to that. I yield.
Very good, Mike.
If I may, if I may, Lewis here of Michigan. Mike, you've made that statement before when I was not on the call regarding the intention of Black Lives Matter and Antifa. I would suggest right now proof of that claim. What is it that you have that you can prove that can verify that claim that Black Lives Matter is planning on showing up and starting any type of rioting in any destruction of property. I yield.
Lewis, this is
Yeah,
Abraham. I've seen
No,
the video.
no, Abraham,
Point of
please,
order.
Abraham, I'm not yielding the floor to you. That was a direct question at Mike. Please allow Mike to respond.
Okay.
Thank you, Lewis, and thank you, Abraham. Lewis, your question is excellent, and I just want you to know for the record, I was on board with the Colin Kaepernick movement, the Black Lives Matter movement in the very beginning when it was genuine and benevolent and honest, but it has been hijacked by elements that are criminal. And my proof is a video clip that is readily available on YouTube of a news clip, I believe it was on Fox News, where it was a gathering of BLM and Antifa people at a conference where they were laughing and boasting about showing up in the middle of the night in front of houses of prominent conservative speakers and politicians. And they're already doing this. They are doing it right now.
If I may respond to that, Fox News is not a reputable source. Fox News has gone to court. They are entertainment. They've actually gone to court and argued the position that they are not a 100% news source, but are entertainment and allowed to do what they do. So I would request that you cite another source other than a Fox News source that is entertainment, like WWE. I yield.
Okay, your objection.
No. That's a court. What I state, and I like everyone to bring forward, is verifiable information. And Charles has heard me say this on multiple occasions. So what I say is verifiable, and I would like another source other than Fox. I yield. Yes.
Please.
Yes.
If I was allowed to finish,
Mike has the floor.
I'm answering the objection of Lewis. I agree with you 100% about Fox News and the definition of it. They are entertainment. Your objection is warranted, and I accept your objection. I will attempt to find the news clip because it is a video. It is not an opinion source. This was a video clip of a conference where they were stating these things. These were people that worked for BLM and Antifa, and they were stating them. And to be honest with you, Lewis, I don't really disagree with the tactic. We used a similar tactic up in Ohio many years ago in front of a judge's home. Now, we didn't do it at 2 o'clock in the morning, which I think is a good idea, actually, but we did it, in the evening when everybody was home from the day after work, and we made a lot of noise in front of this judge's home. But we weren't violent. We weren't throwing rocks. We didn't have guns. Okay, that's the difference. So I totally yield to your objection. I honor it, and I yield right now to other opinions. Thank you.
I would like to interject.
And I would look for that source, Mike. Thank you. Abraham, I yield. You've got the floor.
Okay, real quick. Lewis, are you suggesting that any movement is impervious to being hijacking or hijacked?
I haven't suggested anything. What I've asked is for proof of claims. I do not like statements made as if they are factual without verifiable information. I have not made a suggestion, Abraham. I've asked for proof of claim of statements made.
I'm clarifying, not accusing. So there's no doubt that all large movements are hijacked. I think that's a fact of common understanding. All large movements. Okay.
Agreed, but I will not allow what I'm hearing and have heard when I have reviewed some of the recordings of these calls, because I was not in attendance when these statements were made, and what I'm hearing here is a boogeyman that's being created from BLM and anti-fascist groups. Antifa is an anti-fascist group. Right. And until someone shows me otherwise with a proof of claim that is not simply a YouTube video or a Fox News excerpt, but something that is verifiable information, I would ask everyone on this call to bring forward, when they make statements such as that, verifiable information. I will change my position. However, at this time, if someone has black, if the term Black Lives Matter is offensive to one, then I am offensive to that one, because that's offensive to me until someone proves to me otherwise. Yes, I yield.
Yeah, thank you, Louis. Just a quick point of order, briefly. Like I said, I saw a video of a conference of BLM and Antifa members, they themselves stating their strategy. And like I said, Louis, I don't have a problem with the strategy. I think it's brilliant. It worked for us up in Ohio when we protested this judge's home out in front. But
if I may, Mike, before you go further, the only thing I'm stating is that that's provided to me, as you said you would, before we accept that as fact. So we can set that, we can table that, until we have that provided.
Yeah, no problem. I will try to find it. I can't guarantee it, but I should be able to find it, I think. And also, I was just told by an assistant here, my fiance, she said, and I can't verify this, but she said one of the Antifa leaders was arrested. One of the organizers was arrested for what crime or what charge?
I'm looking for it.
Okay, she's looking for it. We will try to verify and give
Thank you, because it's hearsay up until that point, so I would ask that you not even introduce it. Thank you.
That's right.
May I?
Emma.
This is
Emma, yes.
Wayne County.
Emma. Yes.
Thank you. I'd like to also ask Mike this. BLM is an umbrella group. They're all across the country now. So if you're looking at one location in one city or state, I think is really bad to shade the entire organization. And for the life of me, I'm trying to connect why Colin Kaepernick's name was mentioned. There's no association there at all. And I do believe, having appeared on stage a number of times, that you can stage anything that you want, especially when it reflects unfavorably on a specific segment of people. BLM, one location, does not represent another, and I yield.
Okay, may I respond to the lady, Mike in Florida?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am. I just want to say, with all due respect, ma'am, the only reason I brought up Colin Kaepernick is because when he first came on the scene with his protest and his opposition to police brutality, I was in total harmony with the man. I have been in total harmony with the black community in regard to police brutality. I have defended them. I have spoke out against the police brutality in opposition to my fellow conservative, patriotic citizens, so-called. But I stand firm on my position. My defense of black lives do matter, and they are under attack. There have been multitude of attacks by police to unarmed black citizens, male and female. But there has also been, at the same period of time, a record number of killings by blacks upon blacks. Ma'am, this is not my opinion. This is a statistical fact. So to say all that and sum up with this, we have serious problems. We need to have dialogue in our communities, black, white, left, right, Republican, and Democrat. And we can't have stumbling blocks of egos and false opinions and fake news. We've got to keep everything based on facts, and that's why I yielded and I accepted the objection of Lewis. It was right on point. We need to have factual evidence, and I will seek that for him. I yield. Thank you.
May I?
Emma.
Thank you.
Yes.
I heard Mike say there have been record numbers of blacks killing blacks, but I wanted him to go further and say, well, in your community and you attack, that's basically who you attack. I don't see Asians killing Spanish, and I don't see Spanish killing other ethnic groups. You usually associate within your area. So I think that's an aside or a comment that need not have been made to try and prove a point. I still am wondering why does Colin Kaepernick's name come up? But anyway, I yield.
And if I may, just very, very quickly, Mike, I would ask you to refrain from that statement. Black on black crime is fictitious.
Thank you.
That statement is fictitious. Please refrain from that type of dialogue. It in and of itself is a Fox News talking point, which is offensive. Okay? That it doesn't exist. When you examine the crime statistic, they are consistent with any other ethnic group. Race is fictitious. So I use the term ethnic group. I do not use the term various races. That in and of itself is a fictitious and racist term. So I'm just trying to bring some light to the group so we can somehow correct our language moving forward and communicate more effectively. With that, I yield.
If I may, point of clarification. Got it.
Well, go ahead.
As far as discussing Black Lives Matters, I see comments in the chat. I hear dialogue. I absolutely disagree. If you actually look into the research of Black Lives Matter, where it's funded, who originated, it's 3 lesbians that were arrested and escaped the state. I am not the authority on it, but I'm in the hood, and I actually try to wake up some of the people at the pantries with the Black Lives Matter show. Black Lives Matter is to set up black people that actually are honorable. They're protecting the paid agents in Black Lives Matter, and that's in every state, everywhere. You're mistaken what you're putting in the chat. All of Black Lives Matter is a fascist organization that's used to free up who are the true honorable black people in the community to set them up to be targeted later. Anything to do with Black Lives Matter is a distraction and a trap, okay? This is factual. There's Bishop Larry Gator.
No, not okay.
Bishop
not okay.
Larry, let me finish, please. Let me finish, please.
And in fact, Charles, I would ask Charles that you do not allow these type of statements to be made without verifiable facts. Now, if there were additional links,
verifiable facts.
No, not verbal. Please give me something, Scotty, that is verifiable in writing of anything that you're saying regarding the funding of Black Lives Matter, and its organization, its executive organization, or its purpose. If you cannot provide that, I would ask you to keep your opinion to yourself. Charles, I yield.
I was interrupted. I had the floor. Thank you. May I have the floor again?
But when you're making erroneous statements.
No, I am not. These are not my statements. This is from Bishop Larry Gators, and it's also from Pastor Masser, both from New York. They are the ones that taught this to me, and they will provide you the evidence. In fact, some of it, I put a link in the...
You need to provide the evidence.
You're interrupting me twice without letting me finish. That is disrespectful.
This is disinformation. Charles, are you going to allow this disinformation to continue?
I'm trying to provide you the source I got it from. I'm in the
Scotty, can we table the issue? Can we produce some documents, some verifiable evidence, and revisit the issue in a later conference?
That's what I was trying to finish up with. The crowdsourced... Can I please finish my damn statement? It's only going to take another minute. This is where I learned it from. You don't want to look where I learned this from, but you're going to challenge what I've researched and seen other people produce the evidence. It's 2 separate people. Bishop Larry Gator.
Yes, I am. And if you're giving this verbally, I most certainly am going to challenge that. I would ask you to provide this information. No, link in the chat is not sufficient for me to review on this call, Scotty. What I would ask you to do is forward that information to Charles's email so he can distribute, so we can have review of this information for discussion on next week's call. I am more than willing to have an intelligent dialogue with you regarding your sources if you provide them to me. I am not willing to provide or accept Pastor so-and-so, okay, and Reverend Hoodoo, or whomever, as factual sources on this call today. I yield.
Point well taken. Scotty, follow the instruction. All I would add, this is Abraham Nevada, is social engineering is extremely pervasive, very powerful, and it's very hard to get a handle on fact from fiction because social engineering comes from the top down, and the people who are distributing social engineering are 1,000 times smarter than all of us combined together, and they know what they're doing. I yield.
May I? This is Michael from Florida.
Yes.
I'm the one that started this mess, and I must admit that after hearing both sides, I must admit that I agree with Lewis. We need to have our facts before we make these claims. It's very dangerous in this volatile environment right now to make, and I apologize for doing so. In the future, I will refrain from making such blanket, vague statements about a particular organization or group without giving facts via email to Charles. So we really must do our due diligence, provide the hardcore evidence with facts, verifiable facts, not some preacher's opinion, not some Protestant preacher's opinion, not some Catholic preacher's opinion, not some Al Sharpton opinion or Jesse Jackson opinion, but it's got to be factual evidence that can be backed up by a reliable source.
With time to digest it, yes.
Yeah, so I yield, and I apologize for the mess I created.
And Abraham Nevada, I think a lot of this discord comes to becoming familiar with the process. This assembly, this platform, it's still getting its bearings. And how process comes to bear on this is going to be fleshed out as we hit these bumps in the road. But we've got to be very careful not to let these bumps in the road, which can get extremely volatile very quickly and can disband this group immediately if the emotions run too like electrifying. So we're figuring our way through this, and we're developing process for how to handle these bumps in the road. So if we could all just be a little patient and allow these processes to develop so we can come to this metric of understanding how to flow information by understanding what process we use. I yield.
Thank you. If I might, to conclude here, I think we've got a proposition for Scotty and or Michael and anybody else that has concerns about the integrity of the Black Lives Matter movement, to go ahead and try to assemble their evidence and send web links or documents to me in email, and I'll try to get it out to everybody concerned. And at that point, we can reschedule this on the agenda items that I normally put in the conference invitation for next week, and we can revisit the issues after we've had time to look at the evidence, so that it's not just general accusations that we've got here. And we'll schedule that for next week. Is that okay for both Scotty and Michael and Lewis and everybody here?
Agreed.
Well, I'm sorry, Charles. Can you repeat, please?
Is generally putting the evidence on presenting the evidence to the people concerned, and scheduling revisiting this issue of the reliability of the Black Lives Matter organization, whether or not they've been compromised, examining the evidence. I'm planning on putting that on the schedule for next week's conference, so that we can de-escalate the conference. Okay.
Yes,
and is Scotty? Thank you. Is Scotty still with us? Did Scotty get angry? And Scotty, are you there? I don't see Scotty in the list there. I think Scotty might have got mad and hung up the phone on us. Anyway, if he sends me the information that he was talking about, I know the fellow
Looks like
named
he's
Larry
just muted,
Bishop.
Charles. Scotty, let
Pardon
me
me?
see if I can unmute him. He looked like he muted himself somehow.
Oh, I do see him. Yeah, if you can unmute him, that would be
Can't
great.
unmute. I'm trying to,
Okay.
and I'm not able to. I think he's got to do it at his end.
Okay. Well, hopefully he heard us and he'll be prepared to. He'll send me some web links that we can all examine. I know he did mention that Larry Bishop Gators fella. He's a black man, a right-wing type of black man, and I've heard him speak on a number of important issues. I do think he makes some errors, but generally he sounds pretty good. And I would be real interested in what Scotty specifically might have from Mr. Gators that would address this issue about the alleged corruption of BLM. But hopefully
I'm very
we can
interested in both links.
Yes. So hopefully we can de-escalate that issue for now, and we can go on to other issues, and we'll put that on the agenda for revisiting again next week if that's agreeable to everybody.
Yeah, I'd like to add something. I don't think Scotty meant any disrespect by his position. I think he was just trying to voice information. And sometimes voicing information can go against belief systems and can become volatile very quickly. But I don't think he meant any ill will by anything he had mentioned. Just want to make that statement.
I'm inclined to believe that also. Go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, Michael, Florida. You know, when I first heard Lewis's objection, in my mind I objected. But when I realized and thought about it thoroughly, he's correct. We need to have the evidence before we make a blanket statement about any particular group or organization, unless it's widely known and widely accepted by all parties involved in the conversation. But in this particular conversation, we had a very serious and merited objection, wanting proof and wanting facts, not opinion. And you must admit that is an honest pursuit. That is a worthy, merited pursuit. And I admitted fault, and I accept his objection and agree with it. So I will pursue the evidence that he seeks. I yield.
I would like to add. Hold on,
you,
Scott. One second. I would like to add, the whole reason why we are here together is because of a massive conspiracy. A massive conspiracy that has hijacked the entire nation, well-funded, rooted back in ages, and it's because of a conspiracy that we're all here trying to unravel this. So just be a little careful when you start looking for facts to prove anything, because money can generate a lot of facts. Don't mean they're true. So, facts a lot of times can be in the eye of the beholder. So putting a premium on facts sometimes can be a foible. Because it's all about conspiracy. That's how we got to this call.
Point of order. Scotty, did you ask for the floor?
Yes.
I never heard you ask for the floor.
When I first started with the BLM stuff?
I don't know. Who was that was just speaking?
Abraham.
And I agree with Abraham.
I didn't hear anyone ask for the floor. I just heard an immediate outburst, and in respect to everybody.
If I may, really I'm asking for the floor now.
Yeah, nothing personal, Abraham. I just am trying to admonish respect and proper protocol. I yield. Thank you.
Scotty?
Okay, I heard you calling me. I was upstairs. I could hear you, but you couldn't hear me. Besides, this microphone stinks. As far as the BLM thing, yes, I thought I had the floor when I started speaking, and I'm not upset over that you're wanting evidence. I'm upset you wouldn't let me, you kept interrupting me while I'm talking. I thought we established rules that if someone has the floor, you let them finish, and you did it 6 times, okay? And I'm not saying that I'm the expert on this. I merely tried to put in a few pieces of the puzzle from two people that are experts that you're immediately claiming is their opinion. Bishop Larry Gators is phenomenal researcher, a freaking historical, and I've seen a good, he's on, that's what I was trying to say. I did put a link in the chat today from Crowdsource the Truth. I think it's Jeff Goldblum. He has Bishop Larry Gators on a show just about weekly, and he's been talking about Black Lives Matters for years. And it comes down to, he breaks down who Black Lives Matter is, who started it, who funded exactly what you're asking for, and it's still, as Abraham said, facts can be bought and paid for, and so all I was trying to do is instill my opinion that you're being misled with this Black Lives Matter. It's a trap. And then it also comes down to you asking for evidence. I have provided links, and so far, Abraham is the only one that got back to me with anything to discuss about the links. Plus, he also shared an amazing, funny thing from some comedian dude. But he actually, we do go back and forth, and he does. I had accused him of missing a few pieces of the puzzle about 4 meetings back, and boy, he sent me a video of Crow 777 that showed, no, he is aware of those pieces of the puzzle. Just like today, he just came to the conclusion that, yes, facts can be bought and paid for. The finest propaganda is bought with money they print. All I was doing was getting annoyed because I was interrupted incessantly trying to say, in that Crowdsource the Truth link, if you scroll down, you find something from Bishop Gators. Then you can see if it's just some bishop's opinion. These are not normal people. These are credible by me. In order to be credible by me, you had to pass my test. I'm not infallible. I make mistakes, and I have the right to change my opinion if I learn new and better info. I yield there. You want to talk, Abraham?
Real quick. I think, and I could be wrong, but I think what Lewis was addressing is just kind of like throwing it out on the floor with this assembly that we have going on here, rather than sending him or sending someone targeted information so that he can review it before throwing it up in open discussion, because you're catching him off guard. He hasn't had the time to review what you have, so there's an imbalance here of information and knowledge. So I think, to clarify, if I'm right or wrong, that what Lewis is saying is, don't just throw things up in the air and expect him to go do a 20 hours of research on a dime's notice and then throw everything out in the open. He's trying to establish protocol and process that first send some links and allow those links to digest. Then you can have a balanced, open discussion. I think that's what Lewis was responding to, because it could be taken as mindless propaganda when a person doesn't have the opportunity to review that information first and then bring it out into the open. I think that's where Lewis was coming from.
And I think,
if I may,
can I respond to Abraham?
Scotty, I think we've dwelled on this issue long enough. I think it's obviously causing. Thank you. I think we need to place it on the agenda for next week's conference after people have had more time to look at the evidence that you've raised, and then we can jump back in and put on the gloves and whatever if we need to. Hopefully we won't. But we obviously emotions have flared a little bit. We've all got our own passionate beliefs, and hopefully we can work towards a consensus and de-escalate the differing points of view here. I think we've pretty much exhausted it for this evening here. If we might, Scotty, I'll open the floor for just a brief comment from you. If you can really quickly just summarize. I yield.
I will. I only need 2 sentences. Well, that's just it. I have shared links in the past. Some of them was about where the police are being defunded, what that actually does, how that actually makes the police lose their immunity. And nobody got back to me on the previous links, so why should I give you more links? Why should I waste my time with more links when you didn't look at the earlier links that were to verify other points? I have better things to do than to give people links that they don't look at. Okay, you were the one asking for evidence, yet I've given you evidence in the past to verify what I said, and no response. I yield, and I'm done with the floor.
It's not an important issue to me. Yeah, I would like to get past this. Was that you, Michael, trying to say something?
Yeah, just one
Or
last
something?
final brief comment. I think it can't be denied. We are in a police state. Police brutality is beyond rampant. It needs to stop. Police brutality is being committed upon all people. And that is not, that is a factual statement that I think we all can agree to, and it needs to stop. And the only way it's going to stop is if we organize and unify and combat it lawfully. I yield. I'm done.
Abraham, Nevada. I really hate that term, police brutality. I think more descriptive is police insanity.
Yep. Hear, hear.
I
Thank you.
agree with the
And
statement. I yield.
thank you, Louis.
What'd you say?
And
I missed.
I agreed with you. I agreed with the statement, Michael.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I yield.
I think this is a traction point for one of the general issues that I like to focus on, in that the nature of the police power. I believe it's in Black's Law Dictionary under police power that it indicates that the Supreme Court of the United States has declared that the 10th Amendment authorizes local municipal governmental jurisdictions to implement police power, because all rights are preserved to the states and to the people. And so that means that the U.S. Supreme Court is saying that the states can run their own evil empire, Nazi little military police states, because the 10th Amendment preserves all power not otherwise delegated down to the people. It's a really perverse definition, but it shows that this police power is coming from federal de facto Supreme Court decisions. It's not a natural, organic process for peace officers to organize. If we responsibly self-govern in our own township communities, then we've got our town constables in place. And if we have our town constables in place, there's absolutely no necessity or justification whatsoever for a local municipal police department. We can and should defund those municipal police departments, and we should be taking that same money and giving it to our local town constables, who can responsibly self-govern from the grassroots bottom up, instead of top-down authoritarianism like the police power is designed. I yield.
This is Nikki. May I speak?
Nikki.
Yes, in the chat area, when I was looking at the itinerary for today, and it says that criminal complaint, and at the beginning, before the topics kind of changed there, you were talking about putting something together, and what I did was mention to you that here in the chat area, I went ahead and I said that the remedy is still the same, as far as the coronavirus goes, is that dissolve the political bands and assume amongst the powers of the earth separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and nature's God entitle us, and of course the body builds up its own immunities, and declare the causes which impel us to the separation, which would be, telling about that, and I have a link for that in there, in the chat area. But then, as far as a criminal complaint, when you were starting to talk about how this is criminal activity that's being perpetrated pretty much through the courts, if you see the definition of wheel conspiracy, and I gave the definition of wheel conspiracy in the chat area there, and if you want to show it, whoever is manning the board, go ahead and show it, because since 1913, when silver was taken out of the coin, it was later on, but in 1913, the Federal Reserve Act came into place, and so did the 16th and the 17th Amendment. Now, you were just talking about the 10th Amendment. Well, consider the fact that under Article 1, Section 3 of the U.S. Constitution, 2 senators were to be selected from their state Senate in order to represent the people who had put them there by direct election to begin with, and the state. So therefore, the 17th Amendment essentially nullified the 10th Amendment. And with the nullification of the 10th Amendment that was reserved for the states and the people, every other amendment from 1 through 9. Just by virtue of that Senate being directly elected to represent the Federal Reserve System that was put in place in 1913 under Central Bank Act. Well, where I'm going with this is that because the House of Representatives has the power to work with the money, and that's pretty much it, to fund things. And the Senate can override anything that the House comes up with. And the Senate is working for the Federal Reserve System. Then in looking at the way this current system of government, and I use the word current as a unit of exchange, the current that we use, as somebody had mentioned that early on, well, the fact is that it is energized by that. The wheel is energized with the hubs and the spokes and the chains to cut down on the racket that is being produced by the laws that are being generated through legislative process, through the political system, in order to fund all of this energy throughout the chain. So including the court system that seems to have become like a protection racket using RICO codes for the Federal Reserve System and this racket, or not racket, but this conspiracy that they put into operation back in 1913 when the silver was still part of the coin. But then, since 1971, when silver was totally removed from the coin, it is us that have become the creditors for this, and we're not saying anything. We need to speak up. So anyhow, what I did is you have the definition for wheel conspiracy. You can follow the, the energizing of the hubs, spokes, and, chains in any way you want, but that goes down to the local clerk. And what I recommend, why I recommend this criminal complaint, and I have this in the chat area too, is that the fiduciary responsibilities of a tax collector is to be that of seigniorage. And seigniorage, and there's Investopedia where it has a definition of seigniorage. Seigniorage may be counted as revenue for a government when the money it creates, and that's what it happens to be done through the Federal Reserve System, is worth more than the cost to produce. It's still the same today as it was in 1937, and I gave an article that was in a 1937 newspaper here in the local area that shows that the process of creating the money through the bonding process, which we are bonded, bundled, and monetized. As human beings, we are nothing but real estate in their minds, and we're dirt. So, and through dirt comes everything that we eat and wear, and so on and so forth. So anyway, the fact is, okay, go ahead. Sorry about that.
In one sentence, could you summarize what you've been talking about in one brief sentence? Your point, please. Thank you. I yield.
I'm sorry, my mute button is delayed here. Okay, the reason I put this forward is that the way the topics have started out today, it seemed like evidence was needed in order to solidify a judgment. If I got the impression correct, did I? Charles? Lewis?
Yes. We do need evidence in support of any judgments that we come forward with. Nikki,
okay.
You're correct there.
Okay, so the bottom line is that there is ample evidence that yes, we are being run by a criminal enterprise, and that is through the Federal Reserve System. And historically speaking, all of this could be shown to people in your local area that they will get it, especially when they know that somebody is pocketing the money that is created, not created necessarily, but the difference between the cost of printing and the notes that are produced. And that evidence is there, right there in the chat area, and you can go to the Federal Reserve System, and the Federal Reserve System, the Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve System, there is actually the cost, the breakdown of the cost of printing currently. And it's 7 cents, not 5 cents now. It just changed not too long ago, back in April. It changed from 5.5 cents to 7.7 cents to print a $1 and $2 note, 19.6 cents to print a $100 note. So consider that for every dollar, somebody is pocketing 93 cents for the printing of that note. So think of it this way.
May I please?
Sure.
May I interject? Thank you. So what you've been talking about is a catalyst and a trigger to get people involved in.
Absolutely. You got it.
So yeah, thank you. I just wanted to confirm that in a few brief words. Thank you.
Well, sure. And one more thing. The way you can get it across to most people is say, hey, look, who's really profiting when the minimum wage workers wages, when the wages of minimum wage workers is increased? Is it the one who is still at minimum wage, or the worker that's still at minimum wage, or is it someone who is printing the notes that pays them? Do you hear where I'm going with that? Does that make sense? If you're at minimum wage, and you've got $5 an hour, okay, and which is, pretty low for right now, and they say, oh, we're going to raise your wages to $7 an hour. Well, who's profiting the 93 cents, or, that is going, who's profiting with the 93 cents for every dollar printed that goes into the pockets of those people who are getting $7 an hour and still have to pay 20% income tax on the $7 face value of that note, when somebody behind the scenes has been putting at least $2 in their pocket for every note that they print, every $2 they print. Do you hear where I'm going with that? And my math isn't quite right, but I'm talking off the top of my head here. Does that make sense to you? Would that bother you if you were a newbie?
Nikki, so what you're saying is that when they increase the minimum wage, the people who are engineering the system actually profit?
Don't you think so? Read the, the seniorage.
Where you were going.
Yeah, the seniorage, and then you'll see that, right there in the Federal Reserve Board systems, it says each year. Go ahead.
How do you use that information? How do you use that information and create a relevancy on how these political bands get readjusted so that we can we should be printing the money. The people should be printing the money. What the Treasury should, right?
Well, the seniorage says that the revenue is often used by government, okay, if they were using it correctly, that 93 cents for every dollar printed, okay, that revenue would be used by governments to finance portions of their expenditures without having to collect taxes. If, for example...
Amen.
Yeah, so it's right there. It's right there in their own, and when we lose a definition or a word from our vocabulary, we lose the concept it conveys. Seniorage is a word that is lost from our vocabulary. So bringing it to the attention of the people and explaining what that means and saying, look, they took this out of our vocabulary so that we wouldn't know exactly what they're doing. And right there, it explains it. And it's in the chat area.
May I, please?
Sure.
May I? Yeah,
oh, absolutely.
Point of order. may we? Very interesting topic, but I think we need to get back to our topic of the conference. Charles, could I get some input from you there?
I'll go ahead and mute out. Thank you.
Thank you, Nikki. Thank you, Michael. I was thinking the same thing. The economics is a particular subset of what our general focus is on trying to empower the grassroots and take back responsible control of our government. The economics issue is important, but it's not the central focus. We need to focus on I think we were boiled down to two issues. The one that Michael is emphasizing of building our grassroots numbers in our communities. That is at least one half of it. And the other is the point that Abraham nicely drew out about having the model of vacant offices at the grassroots level in place so that people can intellectually conceptualize how their local communities can responsibly self-govern. I think those are the much more critically important issues that this conference is designed to focus on. And certainly the economics issues are important, but I think they can be addressed as a subset of the larger issues of organizing the grassroots as opportunity allows in that organizing process. And I've got a paper worked up too that addresses some of those economic issues in manners that are really unfashionable, and perhaps we can set aside a particular agenda item on the agenda. Perhaps I'll add another issue item on the agenda for the conferences here to address just economic issues, and maybe we can spend again another 20 minutes or a half hour next week talking about economics. But I think we should move past that, as Michael has suggested. I yield.
If I may briefly, Michael, Florida, I would just like to say in response to Nikki's dissertation, or whatever she would call it, it was a presentation. Her point is valid. And I have thought for a long time the Fed is a great triggering catalyst to get people involved in this movement. Personally, I feel there are three triggering catalysts. The Fed is one. It's the engine of tyranny. Number two, the crime of 9/11. That penetrates all political boundaries, all political classes, all socioeconomic sides. And the third are the three assassinations, the new KKK, I call it. Kennedy, and King. Those three issues, we could unite this country, all races, all political beliefs, in taking down the deep state. We must have a catalyst and we must have a trigger at the federal level for federal issues, for national unity. At each state level, each state has its own catalyst in triggering issues and events. And locally, each county has triggering and catalytic events and issues that can unite the people on. There are three different environments we need to focus on: national, state, and county. And if we can find out the critical triggering elements in our local communities, we can start forming local assemblies and grow it from the bottom up. I yield. Thank you.
Nice, Michael.
And with that, I agree, and I love the message that Mike has just presented. It's just after 7:15, and the first portion of the call, I believe, Charles, you should go ahead and conclude, and then you can, and Abe can take the second portion of the call, the more so open mic portion of the call, and operate as you see fit. Any concluding or summarization statement? I yield.
Thank you, Louis. Yes, I would like to briefly draw our formal business meeting to a close here. I think we've at least touched on most of the formal items in the agenda, and we're getting down to nitty-gritties here real nicely. Individual cases, Michael correctly pointed out that we need trigger issues at the national and the state and the county levels. And I would just want to, in closing here, build on that briefly by saying that if people that are concerned about these issues can get into a typing program and type up what a quick and dirty summary of what they think would be a criminal complaint against particular powerful people, probably inside of government office holders, but it could be extra like Bill Gates and stuff, but criminal complaints against specific people. And at that point, we've got judicial process that we can invoke. Unless we've got a proper criminal complaint before the court, we can't invoke judicial process. But once we get at least a rough draft of a criminal complaint, then the rest of us can kind of help put legs under it. Even if it's sloppy, we can build it up more tight. And at that point, we can invoke judicial process, and then we'll be in position to talk about the ultimate critical issue that Michael has again been focusing on, of enforcement. So anyway, at that point, I would like to conclude our formal business meeting. At this point, I would like to again thank Louis Ammon for his excellent expertise in controlling the chat board, the control board here in our free conference call forum. And Louis, I hope you'll be able to kind of hang in the background there a little bit and watch. You frequently do that, but we do thank you for your participation herein, and we will get that agenda item on BLM on next week's agenda so we can discuss that further based upon the evidence that's being presented. And so other than that, I guess, yeah.
Thank you. I yield.
Okay. Good night, Louis. And at that point, anybody else want the floor real quick?
If I may.
Michael.
Just curious to know how many are online at this time.
I saw the number 14.
That's what it shows on my page.
Okay.
There are a few people have left already. They signed off in the chat column.
Yeah, it was 18 earlier.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Great. Thank you.
Yeah.
I yield.
Our numbers are increasing slowly but surely. Michael has addressed some important issues that in one of the recent conferences we built on. Michael has talked about a trigger and a catalyst. And I expanded on that by adding the idea of a projectile and a target. The catalyst fits together with the projectile, and then the trigger would ignite the catalyst, send the projectile towards the target. And our catalyst, correct me if I'm wrong here, Michael, our catalyst would be our grassroots common people. That's the mass of energy that we're collecting. The projectile would be the criminal complaint against somebody that is alleged to have done wrong. The target would be the person who is accused of having done some wrongdoing, probably a criminal accusation against him. And the triggering mechanism would be when the jury arrives at their verdict and a final judgment is declared by the court. That would be the trigger. That would be the grounds to issue warrants. See, the issuance of warrants is pulling the trigger. Does that sound proper to you, Mike?
I'm sorry, Charles. What did you say?
I said, does it sound the issuing of the jury, the final judgment of the court, and any warrants would be the trigger when that process, when the warrants are issued, that would be the triggering mechanism. That would be pulling the trigger, so to speak, when we issue the warrants. Does that sound right?
What I was trying to say is, the issue themselves can be a triggering catalyst to getting people involved. As far as triggering I think we have a difference of definition here. I'm just simply using the word catalyst and trigger toward, the idea that we can use issues and events as triggers and catalysts to getting, excitement, to energizing people to have an interest in civics and due process. Whether or not a declaration by our court or an affidavit, I would hope it would trigger interest, yes. But I wouldn't say that exclusively would be the catalyst or the trigger, no. But it can be part of it. And is that, I missed part of your question there. I hope I'm answering it properly. I'm multitasking at the moment. I'm sorry.
All right. I think you're correct in that we are defining, especially the word trigger, differently. At least we're conceptualizing it differently. I think you're using the word trigger as a mechanism for causing light bulbs to go off in people's heads and helping to raise them to a higher consciousness level of being more fully informed. Whereas I was thinking of a trigger actually accomplishing the end goal of taking some corrupted public servant out of office and putting somebody else that's more responsible in that public office. Are you?
Yeah, that as well. I agree. However, we must have a structure in place with, far many more people than we have right now in order for that to float. Otherwise, they'll sink our boat in a moment's notice. We have to have the structure. That needs to continue. That needs to be crafted and assembled. We're building this machine. It's going to take us through uncharted territory. A four-wheel drive, so to speak, or a six-wheel drive vehicle we need in this rough terrain. But at the same time, we're going to need people to man the machine and operate the machine. It's a very complex machine. So it's going to be both. The word trigger and the word catalyst applies to both. But I think first we've got to get people involved. And to get masses of people involved, we're going to need a substantial trigger and catalyst that can penetrate both parties, all socioeconomic statuses. That is going to be crucial. Because if we just do this from a conservative, white standpoint, we're going to be defeated. We've got to have a cross-section of people that fill our offices. Otherwise, it'll look partisan. It'll look, supremacist in some fashion.
Agreed.
If I may.
I yield. Thank you.
Ma'am?
Right now, currently, there are jural assemblies assembled through many different groups. I think we're all familiar with the Michigan group, the Republic, and the American states. There are more numbers of bodies, but they don't actually know what to do. So if we were able to unite these groups, and I think, the members know what the obfuscation and the fraud, it's just they don't have a blueprint as far as what to do. I think perhaps this group might be able to fulfill that need. And I don't know how to bridge the groups and unite them because, I've tried once upon a time. But at this point, I don't think that, the small issues that separate these groups even matter because it's now operating at the state level. So it's no longer under somebody's jurisdiction. It's under the state's jurisdiction. And so I think that if, this group is able to put a blueprint together that's easily understandable, short, precise, to the point, then I think there's more of a chance of having it acted out because at the state level, and I'm speaking for Hawaii in particular because that's where I live.
Point of order, please. Point of order. Name and state.
Perry, Hawaii.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much.
So recently there had been a kidnapping of 5 people who were not following the governor's mandate for social distancing or whatever it is, or whatever crap they pull. And so, people are more mobilized the more personally they're affected. And, of course, all the witnesses that surround this event witness the fraud. And so, but they don't know what to do. And so I think that's where this group could be of big help as far as formulating something that people can actually utilize in order to address all the wrongs that have been done. I yield.
If I may.
Got it 100%. 100%, yes. Hawaii, you're on point.
Michael.
If I may. Thank you,
yes,
Charles.
Michael.
I just wanted to say, Michael in Florida, that the valuable lady that just spoke from Hawaii, I was reluctant to interrupt her with a point of order, but her speaking was so valuable, I wanted to identify her and know who it was, so please forgive me. But, we have a form of a blueprint in place, have had for almost a year now, in regard to what she just said. If anybody would like to take a look at it, it is a rough blueprint, an outline for a structure of reporting on the activities of the various counties and the various states. It is called, and if you would like to visit the website, it's www.unitedcountiesofamerica.com. And a particular declaration that we wrote can be found on the same website, but we purchased a URL to point at it, declarationofemergency.com. Declarationofemergency.com. And it's basically an outline as to how we can keep track and report on all the various groups. And there are several, and they all are doing worthy things that need to be done. They might argue, they might bicker, they might have differences, but the fact is they're all working toward remedy and ending the tyranny of the de facto, the deep state, the military-industrial complex, the bankster cartel. These institutions are a national mafia that are working in conspiracy to defraud our freedom and our substance. And we need to be at least united in reporting on all the various activities. And that's the goal of UnitedCountiesOfAmerica.com. Please take a look at it.
Hey!
Love it. Any ideas or viewpoints?
I'm sorry, Michael. Abraham, please mute your phone. Thank you. Sorry about that, Michael. Great presentation, Michael. United Counties of America. That sounds like it's getting down to a much more grassroots level than a lot of our larger focus on the states. and I can't help but think that there's a capability there under just going directly to the counties of more quickly and efficiently bringing about pure common law jurisdictions, whereas at the state level, there's more influence of the Roman Empire civil municipal authority. So there's a lot of profound empowering concepts that you're raising, Michael, and some of the others. Terry from Hawaii. Thank you, Terry. Also, you're talking about a number of the different groups, and I think Michael built on that by saying that he thought all of them are honorably motivated. Maybe I misunderstood, but I would dare say that I've got questions about the leadership of the vast majority of them and their integrity, and some of them, I think, like John Daresh's group, National Liberty Alliance. I not only think John Daresh is purposefully misleading people away from remedies, but that most of the people that are still with that group are part of the problem of leading people away from where the more powerful solutions are at also. So, and I think that touches on the issue that we touched earlier with BLM, that the forces of evil, for those of us that consider ourselves to be Christians, the battle is strong between the devil and God, between the forces of evil and forces of good, and the devil is positioning himself powerfully on this chessboard by raising up all kinds of Judascotes that are here to deceive us. And you can see just watching YouTube videos, there's a lot of individuals that are talking really good stuff, but in terms of larger organizations, they're almost always compromised in one way or another and taking us away from where the real remedies are at. And so I'm just really apprehensive about most of the organizations. I would love to...
Point of clarification, please.
Michael, yes, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I hate to interrupt, but it's very timely. I agree with you, Charles, that, for example, John Daresh, and some of the other groups have leadership that is less than honorable. And however, there is a baby in that bathwater. There are a lot of great people that are involved with NLA. I used to be at one time, I was appointed by Mr. Daresh, Ohio coordinator. But after a period of time, I realized that he was less than honorable, and I abandoned the project. But there are a lot of great people in that project that have good things to say and do, and we can't just discharge the whole group because of the bad apples in leadership. Your point is absolutely on target. I agree with you about several of these groups, but we must realize there are lots of good people within them that we need to recognize. I yield. I'm sorry.
We're good, Michael. Your point's well taken. I admit, even Daresh's group, I'm sure there's lots of good people at the grassroots. I yield also. Comments, questions, anybody else? Hearing none.
Comment, Terry, Hawaii.
Terry, please.
Goes back to my point of all these good people belonging to these groups that, may have nefarious leadership. I'm not sure. But the bottom line is that people are now looking for answers and being proactive. And so a lot of these groups, even though they're good and they generate a lot of, membership, but if the course of action is not clear, people drop off because they're frustrated, they can't comprehend. And so that's why I stress that anything that, is put out, it must be short, concise, and to the point. Because face it, a lot of people understand what's going on, but don't have the ability or the comprehension to do further research or to extrapolate. And so that's why I'm saying that it is really crucial to have something put together that, let's say, a fourth grader can understand. I don't even say fifth grader because they're too smart for me. But, but something that is actionable without a whole lot of further research and clear and concise. And I yield.
Thank you, Terry. Others? Anybody? I would like to expand on this a little bit. Two issues are jumping into my mind. One is the qualified electors at the grassroots level, and the other is recruiting people to be jurists, to sign on to jury verdicts like what we've brought forth with our coronavirus complaint against the emergency war powers declarations that are being invoked under that coronavirus declaration of emergency. And the two are related because, technically speaking, you need to be at least presumed to be a qualified elector to be a jurist. And hereunder, people need to find their place in the godly, righteous organization that we're trying to build here. And in secular, non-biblical terms, it's just qualified elector status in a local township community. But part of those duties, if you're part of God's kingdom, if you're a qualified elector under common law jurisdiction, when your local town constable or your justice of the peace judicial officer calls you as a qualified elector to serve on a jury, you basically have no choice. It's part of your duties. It's part of your burdens as a member of a responsibly self-governing community to help bring forth justice in response to the complaint before the court. And so I don't want to cause people to freak out, but there are duties that perhaps I haven't been emphasizing enough in the past. If we're going to build a better system, we need to show people where the entry point is. We've got an oath of office constructed for qualified electors. If people will look at that, I should add web links to that and the other two oath of office documents in the invitation. But that qualified elector's oath of office form, that is the entry porthole gate into being a member of a responsibly self-governing community assembly. And if people aren't willing to assume the duties of a qualified elector in a responsibly self-governing common law community assembly, then they're not part of the effort to take back America. I don't care how many other warm and fuzzy words you say. You need to maintain qualified elector status, and you need to be willing to assume the duty reasonably, within your reasonable capabilities. There may be exemptions for some things, but you need to be an equal burden holder. And the primary concern, the pivot, the apex of the pyramid, is the administration of justice. And in order to do that, we need jurors from the people to move forward, and that comes in through the qualified elector status. And if you're not willing to serve as a qualified elector in any cases, then I'm sorry, you're not a member of the responsibly self-governing community. And these kind of points, I think, I need to be emphasizing more, and I need to be encouraging people to at least verbally affirm their willingness to assume the duties of a qualified elector. And it would be good also to print out page 2 of that qualified elector's oath of office form, put some kind of a signature or autograph on it, and scan it and send it in so that we can prove that you're a member of a responsibly self-governing community. We've got your documents to prove it, and we've got recordings in conference of you verbally affirming the seriousness of this undertaking. And at that point, we've got people that are part of the machine. We've been talking earlier about our grassroots community. Abraham drew out the point. If the people are all going in different directions, it don't matter how big a fish net we got full of fish. It's chaos and confusion. We need organized communities that is marching to the same tune of truth and justice and peace for the common people, lawful members of society that comprehend the priority for keeping the peace of each of our, in our own individual, unique, ethnically diverse communities. So I wanted to draw out those points, and I think I should yield here for comments or questions. I yield.
Question in Hawaii.
Yes, Terry.
How does the status correction play in this qualified elector? Is that part of it? Is it how important is it to correct the status?
It's my belief that when you are fill out the oath of office form and you are recognized by two other witnesses of similar qualified elector status, then that does correct the presumption that you're somehow less than a fully responsible free American.
Thank you. I yield.
All right. Yeah. And Lewis and I differ a little bit on that. Lewis and a lot of other respected patriots like to go through the birth certificate and things like that, and I don't see any harm to that. And in fact, it probably does shore up your position a little bit. But as a matter of law, if you're a member of a self-governing community, the corrupted judges are making presumptions that basically you're a 14th Amendment slave and you've got slavery status there. That's why they're treating you like a slave. It's based on a presumption. When you are certified as a qualified elector from a responsible judicial officer claiming a precinct level or higher jurisdiction, then that, as a matter of law, breaks the presumption that that corrupted judicial officer would otherwise be inclined to presume that you are laboring under. I yield. Could jump over to the economics issues that Daniel's a little bit more familiar with and comfortable with, and maybe some others. Terry, I see you're coming in under restricted, but there's another person restricted in our conference here too, and I'm wondering who that might be. But anyway, Terry, Michael, anybody, the floor is open.
May I?
Name and state, please.
Rich, California. I think you're referring to me, and I'm just, well, I am multitasking, but I have been listening, and I haven't had any questions or haven't had any burning desire to share any concepts or elucidate in any way. So thank you very much, and I yield.
Thank you, Rich. That helps my mind reduce little rats running around in my head, wondering what's going on there. I'm glad you cured that mystery about the person that's showing up in the control board as restricted. Very good. I can see Daniel is still with us.
I'm here.
Yes, I think it's important to kind of bring the discussion circling around back to the economics issue, because I think we can merge that economics issue with the issues that Michael was focusing on of enforcement Abraham and some of the other issues of the grassroots empowerment and organizing. If we might, unless there's some type of objection from anybody, I'd like to steer the issue back towards common law economics as I visualize them. I think a lot of real empowerment can be had there. Comments, questions, anybody? Anybody? Okay.
We wrote
I'll go.
We wrote some URLs in the chat column. I think it's probably best to read a little bit about them before we discuss them, so that people can pose intelligent questions rather than argue or have a fist fight.
Well, I think we can probably safely work past the fist fights here. But I think.
Who was that? Point of order. Who was that speaking? Name and state, please.
Daniel Krenicki, Michigan.
Okay, thank you.
You could probably read the spelling of my name from the box. If you have video, Mike, you can see my face. I use the video as well as the audio.
No, I was just concerned about your state and your first name. That's all I was interested in.
There you go. Okay.
Thank you.
You got it. I was born and raised here.
If I might. Is that you, Nikki?
I was asking Daniel if he's from Hamtramck.
Yes. I went to high school.
Name.
I went to high school there.
Did you? Yeah, I spent some time on Heinz Street, just outside of Hamtramck. Okay, I'm going to head and yield.
All right. If I might try to target a common ground between grassroots organizing and economics. I've written one document on it that's incomplete that has a number of good propositions on it. It's next to the treason complaint under Supreme Court of Law. It's the last document. And I'll post links later. But in the present economic system, the source of the issuance of the credit is from the Federal Reserve bankers, right? Indirectly, they're in league with the U.S. Treasury, which is issuing bonds that indebt the U.S. citizenry for 30 years in the future to pay on the bonds that the U.S. Treasury gives to the Federal Reserve bankers. And they're under the Federal Reserve bankers loosen up control, quantitative easing, hyperinflation of the spigot of the currency, the medium of exchange that everybody uses to pay for their goods and services. And that's all centralized between the U.S. Treasury and the Federal Reserve Bank. And at some point, I think they can be merged into a single entity, even though they kind of maintain the fiction presently that they're two separate entities. I think for all practical purposes, they're a single entity. And it's all central planning, top-down authoritarian. Whereas what we're chasing here, what we're trying to get our currency to produce for our common people is, quote, goods and services, unquote. We want to be able to use a form of currency that can produce goods and services for our common people. And the present system is functioning that way, but they're spinning it. They're restricting where the quantitative easing, the script money, the hyperinflation, they're they're giving vast quantities of that money to institutions like Wall Street and the military-industrial complex and the bankers, and very little of it is getting down to the grassroots common people. And so one of the main elements of my proposition is that every qualified elector in the USA will be a source of credit based upon the goods and services that he or she is able to produce, and thereunder that source of credit will be deposited, like the individual qualified elector would issue a promissory note for like, $10,000 worth of goods and services that he or she feels quite capable of delivering within the next year or so. And that kind of a promissory note can be delivered to the town constable, similar to the way presently U.S. bonds are indebting the American people only at a national level, and the way municipal bonds are indebting people at the local level. But this would be common law. And that would be an instrument of debt by the individual qualified elector, but it would be a credit in the account of the town constable. And the town constable would take all those from the 10 qualified electors, merge it together into one package of 10 individual debts, pooling the resources, and that town constable would take those and bring them to the precinct captain, along with 10 other town constables, and at that point they would have 100 instruments of debt, which would be a sizable treasury, and they would all be capable, all of the qualified electors in that entire precinct would be capable of producing goods and services that are marketable. People like members of farmers markets and mechanic shops and hardware stores, these people can back up their promissory notes with their own goods and services. And thereunder, an entirely unique, grassroots-empowered economic system can be born, and the precinct level justice of the peace judicial officers can take that money and bring it on up to the county judge, county sheriff level, and each of these levels of jurisdiction would have their own exchange system of goods and services. The people in the county or in the township would be exchanging their goods and services amongst their own community first, and they would only be reaching out to other townships in their precincts if there was things that they couldn't provide for themselves in their own township. So it would naturally tend to build local communities when the local township communities would be working together to produce everything that their members needed, that they're capable of, and they would only go reaching out to the precinct or county or larger jurisdictions if there's goods or services that they cannot provide for themselves in their own local township jurisdiction. And so, and I really believe that can be extrapolated on up above the county to the state and the national levels in manners that will completely, naturally, and organically dismantle the present Federal Reserve banking system and the perverted version of the U.S. Treasury that we're currently laboring under. And there's a number of different elements to that, but that's probably the main element. I'd like to yield for other people that would like to talk a little bit about those economic issues. I yield.
Abraham, Nevada. That sounds like something the Amish could easily implement because they're not so entrenched in the massive system known as society. Would you say that they function off of a structure similar to that, or do they also use dollars?
I don't know how the Amish work. It would seem like they would be very harmonious with what I've generally described here, because obviously they work together in small communities to provide most of their goods and services. So I think it would be similar. I yield.
May I? This is Mike.
One second. Would you say that the Amish would be more of an agrarian community rather than sort of like a city-town community?
I think that would probably be true, but I don't think it matters, because as long as people are producing goods and services that are of value to any other qualified elector in our entire nation, then it doesn't matter whether it's an agrarian good or service or a more citified good or service that somebody's still finding of legitimate value. Michael?
I was just going to say that the Amish, they use currency, they use dollars, and they are great at bartering. And I think this would be a system that they would definitely be interested in. But, this is down the road quite a bit. This isn't something we can implement now, though. I yield.
It is going to take a little bit of effort to get it up and running, but I think it could be fairly fast-tracked if we had adequate support, enough shoulders on the wagon pushing it forward here.
Didn't you say, if I may, didn't you say that your county was very, very favorable to implementing this?
Well, I did say that I've laid a lot of groundwork for doing it. I don't have much grassroots support here yet.
But didn't you say your county was small and it was very, I forget how you put it. Could you elaborate on your particular county, how you feel it's favorable?
Sure. Coleman County here in Texas. Its total population is 8,500 people. The city is about 4,500 people. I live in the city on the edge of it. I've been involved with a CPS case here where I put a lot of paperwork talking about local community governing and the treasonous conspiracy to reduce everybody to slaves through the municipal Roman model of government that has displaced our common law county model of government. I've laid a lot of paperwork, groundwork, especially with the county commissioners and the county attorney and the county judge and the county sheriff. And so it would be real easy to breathe life back into that if there were resources available for me to do it. But the people that I was involved in the CPS case with, they started making progress in getting their children back through the normal de facto system, and that kind of took energy away from the project that I was working on. So I need people to be working with, and so my support group here in Coleman County rather dried up. They're still generally supportive, but they're not just inclined to put a lot of time and energy into it. So, but on a national conference level like what we're looking at here, I've got people like y'all here that are willing to call and get in conferences and work on the nuts and bolts of engineering this entire system. So I'm more prioritizing working on a national and planetary level here, and I figure that the time will come when I can breathe life back into what's going on here in Coleman County. I yield.
But if I may, it isn't working at the federal level, the national level, is basically for recruiting purposes and training purposes, because how can we have any standing or any kind of enforcement on the national level? We must organize within our county to get constables and local people involved. So I was under the impression that your particular county was very suited to growing this kind of a concept that you're advocating. Did I not understand you properly, or is it maybe premature? Help me out there, Charles.
Sure, Michael. and thanks for drawing the issue out. The advantages of this county is it's a small population. There's only 4 precincts. That's another advantage. And other advantages are, too, that in Texas, town constables are in existence. Justice of the peace judicial officers are in existence. Those are elements that are huge advantages in trying to bring forth the general common law model of government that I'm talking about, no doubt. But I do have reservations in focusing there right now, unless something more develops at the national level to focus here. If we need one county to start with, sure. But I would be like, there's a local county judge here that really obstructed justice in the CPS case, and I would be in a position to probably challenge his right to serve as a public servant county judge, but I would need a jury verdict to do something like that, and maybe a jury verdict from an American national jury would be adequate. It would be ideal local here in the county, but if I had a national due process of law jury verdict, that might be enough to prime the pump and get things going. I'd be willing to explore things like that if you'd like to help me get things up and running here, or anybody else would. But outside of other people throwing in and focusing with me here, I feel that what we're doing on the national level here, that at some point the light is going to go on in a lot of good people's minds that don't really comprehend how powerful these common law principles are, that we can build a national government very quickly and efficiently if we're all marching to the same tune and applying the same principles. I yield.
If I may, Terry in Hawaii.
Yes.
I think that you may be able to test out, your, I guess, protocol, because from what I understand, the American state nationals are very well populated, and like I said, they just don't know, we just don't know the proper protocol and procedure for starting a common law grand jury. So in Texas, what you could do is reach out to the American State Assembly because I believe that they're well populated. And if you were to, put forth your suggestions, I'm sure that they would be agreeable in testing out, the protocol. My question has been, and it has never been answered, is that how are we going to navigate the private and the public? Because, they can't interact with one another, but yet, like in your scenario with trying to put a claim against the judge for the CPS case, so we're enacting a common law grand jury on the private side for a claim against a de facto fictional corporate entity. How does that work? And I yield.
Terry, I'm glad you're moving forward with issues that are similar to those on the minds of a lot of good patriots here. Apparently you weren't tuned in earlier when I explained about the difference between grand juries and trial juries. Did you miss that part?
I believe I did. I came on late. Sorry about that.
Okay. Well, and so we've got not only differing definitions of terms there, but we also, I think, have differing definitions of the concept of public and private. And I believe part of that is both of these are and I'm sure a lot of good people are under this impression. I don't question the vast majority, like within LA, but the leadership that is propagating a lot of these thoughts and ways of thinking about things, they know that they are deceiving the common people by putting bad choice of words in their minds and bad ways of thinking about things in their thought process. And the concern, it's fashionable in our circles to define public as evil, as Roman Empire, authoritarian, despotic, tyrannical, and that's the de facto public. That's not the de jure organic public interest that is created in the preambles to our and Bills of Rights of our Constitution documents. The public interest is really a good thing. It's not a bad thing, like the vast majority of the gurus in this movement are saying. They're lying. And private thereunder is a good thing, under the good side of the public. The private only gets its rights respected under a good, honorable public policy. If there's a dishonorable public policy, then the rights of the private individuals are being abused. If there's an honorable public policy, the rights of the private individuals will be protected. Does that make sense to you, Terry?
A little bit, in a way. I guess I'm still, kind of stuck in the definition. But I would propose that that's how you can put your proposal into action, is by contacting the, your Texas General Assembly, and I believe that they are populated, and put forth the qualified elector, and just start acting on it and educate people there on how to proceed with an actual court case. Because that's the problem that, we're having in Hawaii. And although I don't formally belong to the American State Assemblies because I don't agree with the declaration, and, it's a must that I do the declaration their way, and I said my declaration is my declaration. I'm going to do it my way. And so I don't formally belong to that group yet, but, I go on the meetings and just see what everybody's doing, because that's how we learn. And I don't believe that they have, any procedures. So perhaps if you were to reach out to them and say, well, this is what's going on, and this is an opportunity to, test it out. They might require you to, sign their declaration and whatnot. So I don't know how you feel about that, but that probably will be a requirement. So maybe you can educate them further and saying, well, that's the whole definition of the republic, is that individual rights. I have a right to my declaration. Nobody can tell me how to, pen my own declaration. So, it's educational, but I think that it's worth the try, and people are, I think at this point, are just fed up with the trespasses, and so they may be willing to take on the case and, have it as a test case. I yield.
Thank you. Can you tell me who specifically this group is that you're talking about? Is it Anna von Reitz group or Destry's group, or what group are you referring to?
Yes, it's Anna von Reitz group. They're more organized, and lately they've got a lot of people helping with social media and websites and resources, and so they're more progressive in that way, in that they're more able to get the word out. And, they have extensive websites and videos and such, which the other groups seem to lack. And so, they're making a lot of headways as far as membership. And so I've seen that personally, within Hawaii, because, we've always struggled with membership. But, now there's more membership, and I think part of it is because of the state of affairs. It's gotten so bad that people, are afraid, and they're looking for answers, and they realize that, the corporate side is not what they want, and that's not where they're going to get remedy. And so they're jumping on board, but like I said, the majority don't seem to spend a whole lot of time and effort in researching and learning, actual law and history. So they're just kind of following along. But I think if you were to reach out to that group in Texas, and maybe you can, kind of pick their brain about, how many actual members are there, and, and your proposal. It's worth a shot, in my opinion. I yield.
May I? Mike in Florida. Yeah, the lady that just spoke, do they have a website? Do you know the address for their website?
I think it's AmericanStateNational.com. I'm not exactly sure, so don't quote me on that, but it's something to that respect. And if you research for, General Assembly, Anna Von Reitz or something, I'm sure it'll come up.
Now, do you have?
And they have contact information for each of the nation states coordinator. So you can reach out that way.
Is this Anna Von Reitz's group?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Is there a particular group in Hawaii where you're at?
Yes.
Do they meet physically or online?
We meet online weekly, and I believe all the groups meet weekly because, especially nowadays, people don't want to travel anymore, and it is a, wide expanse from one side of the island to the others, 2.5 hours each way. So we they meet online every Wednesday, and every nation state is different. So you can ask the coordinator what it is, and you can probably participate in the phone calls.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Thank you. I yield.
Abraham Nevada. Mike, I just wanted to make note, I don't know if you're familiar with this, but Charles has been in Coleman County for less than a year. So he doesn't have a lot of network established there. I don't know if you do that or not.
No, I didn't. No, thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank you, Abraham. If I might interact with Terry a little bit on the point of my approaching Anna Von Reitz or her associates in seeking if perhaps we might have their permission to present our ideas to them. I'd like to point out that I've already attempted to communicate with Ms. Von Reitz numerous times, and I've been firmly rebuffed. And it seems like I'm going through similar process as that or I have gone through similar process as that with John Daresh. And very currently, I've gone through similar processes that with the group based in Michigan known as National Assembly, led by Destry and Paul, and there in Florida, Roger. And so I'm 66 years old. I've spent a lot of time in this movement, and I've been banging my head for a long time against other gurus, trying to present this information to them. And it seems like every time I do, things start deteriorating into real petty turf conflicts without concern about what's really the most empowering strategy for our common people. And Ms. Von Reitz is on my invitation list. I've emailed her a invitation to come on in and talk about these unique ideas that I'm presenting in my very lengthy email invitation. I don't hear her here, and I swear to God, if she was here, I'd be giving her respect. I'd be talking to her respectfully, and I would be listening to her most powerful arguments about how to empower our grassroots common people, which is the solution. Most of what I hear Ms. Von Reitz talking about is the problem, She's talking about the military police state and how the Vatican's involved and things like that. And a lot of the other groups talk about the problem too. And then they all make vague references to, boy, oh boy, we're going to get the military involved and we're going to have military tribunals and things like that start coming at me. And I just want to throw up my hands because they don't comprehend. Thank you. Thank you, Michael. If somebody else wants to respond to that or explain further the frustrations that I think not only I share, but many others here share also. The leadership is so entrenched and so petty about their own little turf that they won't look at what's really best for the common people. And I think I should take a break there. I yield.
Scotty, I'll respond.
Scotty, floor's open.
Yes, you're actually on point with that. I forgot to mention, I think you're on point. You're also right with your instincts about that Life Force group. That Tank dude has no credibility. I've been meeting some people over trying to help somebody that was sent to me from Hartford. Van Dyke actually gave her my phone number to see if I could help her. And she was aware that they're no good. Tank is actually from Long Island. So, yes, I concur. You actually do have a good sense with a lot of things. I've reached out to Anna Von Reitz and challenged her a few times with a few petty things, and I get the same kind of response. And, yes, I just wanted to reinforce, you're right. Even though Daresh is clearly controlled opposition, in the group there are amazing people, and it's the same thing with Anna Von Reitz. In fact, I really like Anna Von Reitz's writings. She really has an elegant way of tying stuff that would be boring to most people and not interesting. She really has some writing skills, but there's a few little details that when you try to challenge, there's no response. So I just want to concur. You're right. There are good people being suckered by these groups, and I'll yield there. You did point out some very good things. It's an open invitation.
If I may.
But she doesn't take it. Yeah, I yield. Go ahead.
Okay, if I may, Mike in Florida, I wanted to mention that at least the NLA does make the contact phone numbers of their members available. If you go on their site, and I've downloaded these several times over the years, you can get lists of all the people in their organization, their phone number and their name, or at least what they claim is their name. But the phone numbers are accurate. I've called many of these people, and they are real phone numbers, real people involved with NLA, and you can contact them. There are literally hundreds. Each state is listed, and I might be preaching to the choir on this. I think many of us have been former NLA members. But you got to hand it to them for doing that, for being transparent with their membership and having their contact phone numbers available for anybody in the public to contact them. So we could use that as a way to reach out and contact these people. I yield.
Abraham Nevada. Give me a second there, Scotty.
I just wanted to say thank you. I didn't know that. I yield.
Charles, what's the name of that group that we talk with sometimes? A States Assembly?
I think you're talking about Destry's group. I think they call themselves National Assembly.
National Assembly. So they also have that used to be a very large group, and they were in quite a few states at one point, and they lost a good portion of their membership to the rights organization. And we were on a call I don't know, a couple weeks back, and these guys have been at this thing for years, and they got a bunch of really smart sounding guys. They got a lot of gurus there, and I just heard them say themselves, the top leadership say themselves, they've been at this for years. They don't even have one state filed, not one state. And they've been at this for years, and they represent, as far as they're concerned, tip of the spear. And these guys are supposed to be pretty smart, got all their gurus intact, and then Charles has personal meetings with them to try to come up with a combined strategy. And the thing is, once you're invested in your way of thinking, it's hard to say that you don't have the perfect form. And then when you got somebody like Charles who comes in and tries to say, hey, well, maybe you might want to look at it this way, they're so invested in their own ideology, even though after years of effort, they don't even have one state assembled. So it's a bunch of egotistical nonsense, which is why it's going to be very difficult to win this fight. You got a bunch of morons at the leadership, at the helm.
Hear, hear.
I'm just disgusted with a lot of it.
Hear, hear.
Terry, if I may.
Yes.
Sorry, I just got kicked off and then logged back in. I guess what I wanted to share about the Anavon Rights Group is that even though they're well populated because they have a lot of educational, not so much educational, but directives out. So they're gaining a lot of momentum in that respect. But as far as remedy goes, I haven't actually seen any. And, I have good friends who are very active in the membership. And, they've done a lot of things. And they, writing to the general vicar and, discharging their bills and such and such and such. And I hear grand stories, but yet nothing ever materializes, at least locally. And so I don't believe, a lot of it is suppositions, but I don't believe that they've gotten a whole lot of actual remedy. And so I think this is a good time to put forth a common law and grand jury information because their group is rolling out placards and credentials. Credentials are what they call IDs, and placards are what they call them. Right. And so they're starting to do this. And so if they're going to be harassed, and I keep telling them that, okay, well, if you're going to do this, you better know how to defend yourself because, they're under the presumption that, I got my status corrected a la Anavon Rights and everything is just dandy and they're not going to, mess with me anymore and I'm just going to travel with my placard and my this and that and nothing will happen to me.
Yeah,
and
a couple
I
of them
say,
just sat in the street. That'll change that tune real fast.
Well, and I say you better be prepared. It's all. I hope that's the scenario, but once people start, utilizing their placards and such, there's going to be a lot of issues. So I think that the idea of the grand jury and how to learn how to take care of themselves in court and learning remedies that way, I think it's imperative. And I yield.
I've been following Abraham, Nevada. I've been following Von Rights there for, a good 8-10 years, just kind of watching, keep an eye open. And it seems like her biggest remedy is to send, these trillion-dollar letters of claims to high, lofty officials in offices, and that's where she's going to get her remedy. I've read some of these claims, and they're written up really superb, and she's got an excellent vernacular, and she sure knows how to describe a conspiracy on a grand scale, and she sure puts gigantic numbers into these charges, trillions of dollars worth of charges on these people. But what the hell is that going to do for people in the building local community? It's completely non-existent. And I've seen the website the other day where she's selling license plates for cars and ID cards. And these people are going to get thumped. They're going to get thumped hard.
Hear, hear.
And I hope that does not happen. But for me, I err on the side of precaution. So if you're going to be on the front line, then be prepared for all eventualities. And that's what happened with the 5 who were kidnapped. Just over last weekend. 3 out of the 5 are papered up Anavon Rights, and the other 2 are papered up as far as the Hawaiian Kingdom. And on both of them, I say, well, first of all, who wants to be under a king or a queen or a monarch anymore? But yet, there are some very staunch Hawaiians who believe that, yes, they want to bring it back to the way of the monarchy. And I said, you don't really understand the word sovereign. Sovereign means having no king or queen, or ruler over you. So they all have their status corrections, but yet they don't know protocol, procedures on how to interact with the fiction, when they're at that point. And so, as I said, if you don't know how to handle it in court, if you can't get out of it in court, if you don't know how to hold them reliable, then all these, status corrections and paperwork, and they do tons and tons of paperwork. It does nothing because they're at the same junction as I am. I haven't done any of the status correction. So, they don't have any more rights than I do. So what is the point? And
point of clarification, may I?
Please do. I yield.
Well, I wanted to ask you a question. Where did these 5 that you're talking about, did they get arrested? Where did this happen at?
Yes, that's what I mean. Kidnapping is because there's no point for it. We had a health summit held at a public beach last Saturday. And here, I guess there's a governor proclamation or whatever the heck it is called. But, you can't gather more than 10 people. We had about maybe 40, 50. You have to have masks on and, anti-social distancing and the whole bit. And so we were trying to make a point, and not really out there making a point, but just having this health summit so that we can educate people about, the truth on COVID and whatnot. So that's when it happened.
Well, what happened? Why were they arrested? Was it because they weren't wearing a mask, or
right, and not anti-social distancing and gathering more than 10?
Okay,
so
did
they
were
were
refuse?
hit with three of the same, I guess, charges.
Do
and
you remember what the charges were?
It's because antisocial.
Excuse me.
And
Hello.
No mask.
Hello. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, I'm trying to have a conversation. Do you remember the charges that they were charged with?
Well, I don't remember the codes, but it's for violating the.
Are you there? You broke up. We couldn't hear you.
Yeah, my connectivity is kind of sketchy here. Well, I guess you can't hear me because I...
Can you say the specific charges?
It's violation of the governor's mandate.
On the coronavirus thing, or masks or something?
Right. Yes.
What, was any of this videotaped?
Yes. Actually, yes. People started recording. So it is on videotape. I don't have it, but I can get access to it.
Was it put on YouTube, do you know?
You know, I think it was put on Facebook, and I don't have Facebook. I don't do social media. So I'm sure it is on Facebook, but I can inquire and get access.
That's very interesting. I applaud their efforts. So the people that were arrested, 5 of them, they refused to disperse. Is that basically what happened?
There's a group of us, maybe around 15, left because it's towards the end of the gathering, and so some left. And when the police showed up, and there was like 15 police cars, which is probably all the police on the island, all the police cars on the island, and 20 police showed up. And it's a peaceful. We were just gathering to share information. So we weren't like even out in the streets holding signs or anything like that, But when they showed up, and one of them got arrested because, he's kind of a verbose guy, so he tends to talk a lot. So they took him first. And when they did that, other people, who are new to this, I guess, movement, they got excited and they started, chiming in and say, well, this is unconstitutional, blah, blah, blah. And so they took, I guess, basically the 5 loudest ones. and the rest of us, of course, by that time dispersed.
Okay, thank you. It's a very interesting report.
Sure.
Yes. I'd like to expand a little bit on the economics of local common law communities. I don't want to divert from. Are we done with that subject, or at least kind of for the time being? I'll presume so, unless somebody jumps up and says something. But in my document on economics, it's unfinished. It's real rough draft form. One of my propositions is that we contact local police officers and local sheriff's deputies, and we inform them that if they are willing to assume the position of a town constable in one of the numerous townships in our county or their city, that that we believe that we can promise them a 10% pay increase, and we'll be dismantling their municipal police department and for the city, and that the county sheriff's department will be reconfigured away from its current municipal mode of operating, and will start operating under pure common law. And they're in order to get the townships and the precincts up and running quickly and efficiently, local police officers and sheriff's deputies who actually comprehend the difference between a breach of the peace and keeping the peace, these people will be authorized to have a claim on the Treasury in 10% greater than what their current wage level is. And I do believe that is supportable once we gain the brass ring of power over the city and county governmental machinery, which would include the county treasury and the city treasury. I believe that's doable, and I believe that's a tremendous incentive, and that addresses our serious issue of enforcement that Michael was raising earlier. Because if we can get local police officers and local sheriff's deputies to sign on with us at the point of transition, if they're in the county commissioners meeting or the court proceedings where we're raising these kind of issues, at that point, as we get closer to embarrassing the leadership to step down, and we've got our people in the same room willing to step into the vacant position as soon as the de facto step down, at that point, the difference between having those executive officers, police officers and sheriff's deputies, having them totally alienated, like is the present situation, versus having done outreach to them, maybe through emails or phone calls or just hanging around the police department and looking for opportunities to talk to them. If we've got them at least familiar with what we're doing. In Oregon, I yelled at a few sheriff's deputies, "You need a raise. You need a raise." And it was bringing a smile to their face, because I could tell, because they know that they're just cogs in the machine, and a lot of them don't like it. They would like to be doing more honorable work. I think what we've got here is a marketable product, and we can give them a 10% pay raise, and I think we can defuse the problems with enforcement, and a whole lot of good things can happen if we just keep having discussions like this, and we look at the gem from all the different angles, because sooner or later we're going to break this nut, and all the treasure inside is going to just drop in our laps here, I do believe. I'll yield on that point. Background noise. Background noise. Please mute whoever's got the background noise.
Sorry about that.
All right. Rich, yeah. I can expand on that a little bit if nobody wants to. And Daniel, you're an economics guy. Do these radical ideas harmonize with your idea of economics, Daniel?
All right, let me give you a little bit of information, and you can use that as a springboard later on, because you know where you can get some free downloads. And if you go to our Facebook page, there's a lot of essays on file there as well. But let me talk first about Thomas Jefferson. He was the Secretary of State in 1791 when Washington assumed the presidency. Hamilton was the Secretary of the Treasury. Well, Jefferson was there when they launched the first Bank of the U.S. It was 80% owned by international bankers, private interests. In other words, the federal government only owned 20% of it, right? Then Jefferson went on to become the third president. He served from 1801 to 1809. And 4 years after he left the office of president, he wrote 3 letters to the chair of House Ways and Means, who also happened to be his son-in-law. You have to, of course, you listened to Nikki earlier when she talked about the House originating all financial bills, and that is the Ways and Means Committee, upon which Jefferson's son-in-law was the chair. Well, in those 3 letters he wrote to John Wales Epps, his nephew, and his son-in-law, he was married to Maria Jefferson, Jefferson's daughter. Jefferson made a lot of statements which largely go unnoticed. You can look them up in Volume 9 of Paul Lester Ford's The Writings of Thomas Jefferson. It's Volume 9, covers the year for 1813. Thomas Jefferson said about the first Bank of the U.S. that a bank oligarchy directed American politics. What we see going on today is nothing new. They create money out of nothing, and they throw it into factions and divide us politically. The issue here is money. We have to first address the money. And I sent you a copy of Taylor's 28th Amendment. Taylor Pope Williams, a young black man in Salinas, California, wrote a wonderful 28th Amendment, which I approve. And if we followed that, we would also be observing God's economic laws, because all this is found in the Torah that you talked about earlier. So I don't have a lot of time tonight, but all I'm telling you is, if we turn to God and observe His laws, we might just save this nation from destruction. Howard B. Rand, the lawyer in Merrimack, Massachusetts.
Where are you?
They took a video of it, but she ran at it.
Background noise.
Figure out.
Background noise.
Like,
somebody mute, please.
I've been here since 5 o'clock, Charles, and I want to get going now. You've heard my spiel.
It didn't go up in the atmosphere.
No,
it was instinctual.
Completely instinctual. She was just like.
Thank you, Daniel.
God bless you all, and I hope to be here next week. I'm going to sign off for now.
Excellent. All right. Take care, Daniel. Abraham. Abraham.
You saw the video?
Abraham.
I'd like to see that.
Yeah. I don't think I.
Abraham.
And then she.
Abraham. Mute your phone, Abraham.
There was like some boundaries that were pretty, like a river and stuff.
Abraham.
Was, contained happily.
Let me give you
mute your phone.
Order.
Abraham, mute your phone, Abraham.
A hill.
My God.
And then the farmer came out and was going to pack up the
Abraham.
I found the button, Charles. So long.
The farmer was like, hey, do you
All right. Take care, Rich. Abraham.
learn to like herd them into places?
But is that thing have sensors on it? Or?
Yeah.
Because some of the ones in the house
But it
have
doesn't
sensors.
have like a map. It just goes.
Is there a control here that I can mute?
And so the mom of the dog like whistled, made eye contact.
Hey, Charles.
The thing.
Yeah.
Dog.
Yeah, this is Michael in Florida. I'm going to have to run, brother. I've really enjoyed and appreciated the entire conference today. It's been excellent.
And it made it turn?
Thank you. Thank you, Michael. I appreciate that. I guess we're going to come to an early end here. A number of people have dropped off.
Ryder.
Ryder.
Thank you, Michael.
Okay, we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye now.
Yeah,
Bye.
but don't always get into this peeing contest.
Yeah.
I think I got Abraham muted. Yeah, I think I've got him muted. And Michael's dropped off. I see Kamala, Brooke, and Scotty. Kamala, Scotty, Brooke, any of you have any comments? I'll unmute Abraham again in 5 minutes or so.
Yeah, no, nothing special to add. Yeah, there was some good moments. A little bit tense when I was getting interrupted there. I kind of felt that was kind of a pointless interruption when I just could have said what I said. You didn't have to agree with me, but why stop me from saying what evidence I've seen? I wasn't saying because it's my opinion, it's real, but anyway, I will send you, because I know a lot of people are on the phone, I will send you, Charles, one thing from Bishop Larry Gators, and he really breaks down the whole deal with that BLM stuff. No matter where you look, it's a trap and it's a setup. It's that simple. And if you tie it to the law that you're not allowed to protest with a mask on, according to the Patriot Act, which is supposedly suspended, but because of these emergency situations, it's wink, wink, it's not suspended. So anybody protesting with a mask is being, and even if they're not setting you up to be taken out later, it's a very huge possibility going to a protest with Black Lives Matter, you could get killed right there from, because somebody can videotape it. So there's so many avenues of looking at the deception. I was only presenting some areas to look. If you're believing that it's a real company because it's not paying taxes, it's a 3051 charity, so are the churches. You're going to trust them because they're a charity? I didn't see any logical anything there to argue about. I was just presenting, if you are in a Black Lives Matter protest, one, the law says you're an enemy combatant and they could kill you. Two, just from being physically there, you can get shot or beat up or burned or who knows. And yet, it was like I was being attacked for trying to alert people that seem to be highly knowledgeable on some stuff. I'm not knowledgeable on everything. But anyway, it's past us now, and I will at least share the links, and maybe he'll take a look into them. But Bishop Larry Gators is a reliable source of information concerning history and BLM and many other things. He's an amazing researcher. That's why I brought it up. Some people just have the knack to do research better than others. So I yield there. I think it was a good conference overall. I just still feel a little angst from that. Like it was an attack on me, but I yield.
Thank you, Scotty. I've to repeat myself, I've seen Mr. Gators' work, and yes, he does do a lot of really powerful research, cutting-edge research, innovative, insightful. I don't agree with him on everything. I think he's making some errors in some important areas. I think he supports Trump too enthusiastically, but generally speaking, I would like to look at him explain the issue of BLM, and I imagine that there's some real good evidence in it. And I have heard things that George Soros is funding BLM and the others, and I'm inclined to believe that's true. But I don't know. I'll certainly be glad to review the videos that you send, and I'll be forwarding those on to Lewis so that we can have a more cool and rational discussion about it in next week's conference.
Very honorable, yes. Thank you. Yeah. So I will take the time and I'll search for those videos.
All right. Thank you, Scotty. Okay. I think I'll try to unmute Abraham now. Maybe he's done with his other private conversation.
Man.
I think that I agree that our...
No.
Well, it's not our government in the first place. It's a foreign...
Nah, Abraham's still chit-chatting with other people. It does look like our community is rather dwindling here. I do think this was a good conference. I think we covered a lot of important points. Autumn Brooke or Kamala, do either of you have any comments or questions that you'd like to talk about a little bit here before we kind of put a wrap on the conference? Autumn? Kamala?
Hi, Charles. It's Autumn. I was just listening tonight. Thank you.
All right. It's good to hear your voice. I think it'd be good to keep this conference short. And I think I'll put an end on it. Let me go ahead and stop the recording. How would I? Well. Here we are.